Hi guys, it's me, ChazzaHD, and welcome to the third Grand Prix of 2025. And of course, this morning for us in Europe at least, and in North America as well, it is the Japanese Grand Prix that we'll be covering today. And of course, as you can see on screen in the bottom right, or the top right rather, on the screen, the race gets underway in just under 2 hours' time. Cannot wait for this Grand Prix, even if it's dry or wet. It really doesn't matter. The grid is mixed up enough to where I think we're going to have a good race today, no doubt about it. After what was a very surprising qualifying session, not necessarily outside of the top 10, but inside the top 10, it ended up quite a bit different than I think many of us predicted and thought likely was going to happen, and what likely the top 10 would be for the grid. So, yeah, we have got a very good grid for this Japanese Grand Prix at Suzuka. Again, dry or wet, it's irrelevant. I think we've got a good race on our hands and a competitive race throughout the field. The top three on the grid should all be fighting very hard for the win. And then everyone outside of that, you got your Ferraris and your Mercedes cars should be fighting pretty hard with each other. And then the midfield, if you look at the midfield, it's so close. You really can't, it can't be separated by much. It is very fine amounts of time between, say, the Racing Bulls of Hadjar, who is the highest placed midfield car, going down towards even 14th and 15th place. There's not a ton of lap time separating those cars. So, yeah, the midfield, I think especially, is going to be very, very close and very interesting to see who can grab a few important points for their team. And there are many contenders in that midfield pack who could finish in the points. You've got Hadjar, Behrman, Albon, Gasly, Alonso, Sainz, Lawson, Tsunoda, obviously in the Red Bull. There's plenty of options for who could get a point in the midfield. So, yeah, the whole grid really looking very, very competitive. And it was a very, as well, close qualifying session in terms of lap time, which I will show in a moment in terms of the lap time difference throughout the field. It was quite remarkable just how close it was compared to a year ago at this Suzuka circuit. But yeah, obviously this is the usual race watch along, and we're going to do the usual format of building up to the race, going through what happened yesterday, going through the data just to understand why we've got the grid we have, and also going through other bits of data that are relevant for today's race, such as the speed traps, to see who is pulling some good speed at the end of the straight. Obviously, I'll get into my own personal race prediction. Make sure to let me know your race predictions in the chat. And of course, there is a poll running at the top of the live chat, and there are 4 options for you as to who will win the Japanese Grand Prix today. Will it be Max Verstappen, Lando Norris, Oscar Piastri, or George Russell? Let me know out of those 4 who you think is most likely to win the race, or if you think it's going to be someone else, say one of the Ferrari drivers, comment it in the chat. But yeah, in general, hope you guys are all doing, really well, no matter what time zone you're in, how early in the morning it is, how late in the afternoon it is, or whatever, and just what part of the world you're from. Hope you're all having as best a time as possible, and I really do hope you can join me, and later joining me will be my usual co-commentator Niblo. I hope you can join us in enjoying what should be a good Japanese Grand Prix from Suzuka. Niblo, by the way, should be joining us in about an hour's time. So, yeah, should be around about an hour from now. Something like that is when he should jump on. And I know he's got plenty to say about certain things that have happened since the last Grand Prix and just what's happened in general so far this weekend. But yeah, it's going to be, I think, a good day. Definitely a better, more exciting Grand Prix than what we got in Shanghai, obviously, a couple of weeks ago, which was quite drab, let's say. that Chinese Grand Prix. As well, one last thing, if my mic sounds a bit louder and if that's a bit better, then let me know if it does sound better. I do know that Rook, my moderator in chat, has said a couple of times that the mic has been a bit quieter this year. I have raised it a bit, so I'm hoping it should be loud enough now to where I'm coming through pretty clearly. But yeah, I think what we'll do is just get straight into what happened yesterday and what our starting grid is for this Japanese Grand Prix. And of course, here is your top 10 starting grid. Max Verstappen taking pole position in what must be one of the best pole positions of his career and one of the best pole positions we've seen in recent times. That Red Bull car has no right to be on pole position or even on the front row. Maybe you could even argue in the top 3 on the grid. Yet he produced, not necessarily when you watch his onboard lap, the perfect lap. You could definitely see where the Red Bull is struggling with the front end, which Red Bull hope to improve that with an upgrade I think they've got coming next week in Bahrain. But he delivered the lap right when it mattered, and it was a new lap record, of course, of 1:26.9. And yeah, he delivered the lap when it mattered. He did not do, as you'll see in a moment, he did not do a fastest sector at all in qualifying. But when it mattered, he put it all together and did the best lap time. And that's why, not just him delivering right when it mattered at the end, but him putting it on pole in a car that has no right to be on pole position. This is why we say Max Verstappen is clearly the best driver on the grid. And if that car does improve, as much as I like the other drivers and hope the other drivers can fight for the championship, there will only be one winner in this championship battle if that Red Bull car improves. Because Max Verstappen is clearly a level above the rest. He really, really is. And completely smashed the 2 McLaren drivers yesterday. I know, yeah, on lap time it was very close, but, you know, that McLaren is, in qualifying, I think was probably a couple tenths of a second, at least, better than the Red Bull. And yeah, somehow Max dragged it onto pole position. Just an unbelievable lap. I literally, when I watched qualifying yesterday, I literally gasped. It was one of those laps you just could not quite believe that he ended up on pole. The 2 McLaren drivers, second and third. McLaren, I don't think are going to be super disappointed necessarily that they didn't get pole. Yeah, it is a bit shocking that they could not get pole in clearly the fastest car. But obviously, still at the race today, and there's still plenty of opportunities for McLaren to beat Red Bull and still get the win and even a 1-2 finish. But at the end of the day, it was the 2 drivers that messed things up. Lando Norris did not do a really, I wouldn't say a clean Q3, but it was a bit scruffy on his end. And then with Oscar Piastri, Oscar did a brilliant middle and final sector, the best middle and final sector of anyone, as you'll see in a moment. But the first sector, he lost, I think, 0.3 of a second on that final lap. If he had done his best final sector, Oscar Piastri would be on pole position for the Japanese Grand Prix. That is just, you know, the fine margins between third on the grid for Piastri and what probably you could say should have been pole position for him. But again, it's all about delivering when it matters, and that's why Max Verstappen is the world champion that he is. But we are in for some race up front. Verstappen, Norris, and Piastri all fighting for the win. I don't think Leclerc, Russell, Antonelli will be able to fight for the win because I think, for example, if the 2 Mercedes are held up behind Leclerc, I think they're going to be fighting Leclerc in their own battle. I don't think they'll be able to keep up with the top 3. But, Verstappen versus the two McLarens, it's something we saw a bit last year, but we're especially going to see this year. And yeah, cannot wait to see what Max is going to do against those two McLarens. Again, McLaren in clear air, they've got a faster car. They should beat Red Bull, I wouldn't say comfortably today, but as long as they can have enough clear air in the race today, whether it's from an undercut or whatever, McLaren should beat Red Bull today. But we know with Max that he has the ability to make that difference, whether it's over a qualifying lap or even a race distance. And I think as well, we've said this before with Suzuka, but Suzuka is a driver's circuit. What do we mean by that? What we mean is these are the type of circuits, Suzuka, Spa, Silverstone, Monaco, tracks like that. Those tracks are where the drivers really show just how great they are. And Max has been unbeatable here at Suzuka in the last, 3-4 years. And so far proving to be, with getting pole position. So, again, Verstappen just proving how unbelievably great of a driver he is. And, that does apply, though, to also other great performances out there in qualifying. Isaac Hadjar, for example, 7th on the grid, or Oliver Behrman getting in the top 10. It's a bit extra impressive if you can do it at a circuit like Suzuka, because, again, Suzuka is a driver's circuit. You have to be a really good or great driver to be pretty quick around Suzuka. It really does separate the men from the boys, this type of track. And Max is absolutely one of the top men in the world. He is just unbelievable. And then, Charles Leclerc 4th. Honestly, I don't think it was that bad of a lap from Leclerc. Ferrari, maybe you could argue, could have done a tad better, but they were never going to be as quick as McLaren. I think they almost did Ferrari as well as maybe we were expecting them to do coming into the weekend in qualifying. They just don't have the pace that McLaren have, and with Verstappen up there, it makes it look even more disappointing. But, yeah, 4th on the grid, again, not great. It's going to take probably a bit of luck today for Ferrari to get onto the podium, but getting onto the podium, especially with Leclerc, is what they desperately need. So we will see how it goes down for Ferrari today. 3rd row of the grid, Mercedes. George Russell really should have been ahead of Leclerc on the grid. Made a mistake on the exit of turn 2, I think it was. And that's really why he ended up 5th. He wouldn't have got in the top 3 on the grid. Mercedes wasn't quite quick enough for that. But yeah, he should have been P4, but P5 it is. It should be, though, a good battle between the two Mercedes cars and the two Ferrari cars. Very interesting to see with Antonelli how he gets on in his first ever Japanese Grand Prix. Very good result from Antonelli after obviously having some struggles on Friday practice. Isaac Hadjar, again, super job by him. That's 7th, 2 races in a row now. 7th on the grid. And again, with this being a driver's circuit, really shows you just how impressive he has been. I know I think Antonelli is better than Hadjar, but in terms of impressiveness, I think Hadjar has been the most impressive rookie on the grid. No doubt about it. Just needs to start scoring some points, and he will have, I'm pretty sure, a very good season. So, yeah. Fingers crossed for Hadjar today that he can end up at least in P10. Lewis Hamilton 8th. He is quicker than that. He would have actually been 6th on the grid, probably, if he had done his absolute best run in Q3, but wasn't to be, and he's 8th on the grid. Poor effort from Hamilton, once again struggling in qualifying, but I'm pretty sure he'll do better in the race today. Alexander Albon in 9th. Williams doing, I would say, pretty much with Albon at least, as well as they could have done. Only, 6.5 tenths away from pole, which I think represents just how much progress Williams have made, because they were easily over a second away from pole a year ago at this track. And yeah, right in there in the top 10, not far behind at all. The 3 cars ahead of them in terms of lap time. And Albon, I think, looking pretty strong in the battle for the last, say, 2 or 3 points paying positions that the midfield cars or teams can pick up. So watch out for Albon, who's had a really good season so far. Remember, Albon is 6th in the championship, and is really the reason that Williams are currently 4th in the Constructors' Championship. So yeah, watch out for Albon. He's had a great season so far. And also, watch out for Oliver Behrman. What a job by him to get into the top 10. And if you remember, though, a week ago in Shanghai, how quick Haas were over a race distance, I think they're dark horses for, say, winning that midfield fight and maybe finishing in 8th or 9th place. Watch out for Behrman. I think he could have a very, very strong pace today, especially in that car. So, yeah, great job by Behrman, though, to get himself in the top 10. First top 10 start for him at Suzuka. And then the rest of the order. Pierre Gasly, 11th. I think Gasly did the best he could. Carlos Sainz in 12th. He was, though, Sainz given a 3-place grid penalty for impeding Lewis Hamilton in what was a pretty stupid incident from Carlos. And yeah, he will start now 15th on the grid. So it'll be Alonso in 12th, Lawson 13th, Yuki Tsunoda in the Red Bull 14th. Not impossible for Tsunoda to score points. It's definitely possible, but it's so close and competitive in the midfield that it's going to take a really, really good performance for Tsunoda to finish, comfortably in the points. But that is the aim for Tsunoda today. Liam Lawson, obviously out-qualifying Tsunoda, I think makes the point pretty clear that Racing Bulls car is probably at least more comfortable to drive than the Red Bull, and potentially quicker to drive than quicker than the Red Bull. So, yeah, just quite incredible where we find ourselves with those two teams. Then got 2 Saubers, 16th and 17th, no real surprise. Ocon 18th, really being hammered by his teammate in qualifying. At least he was yesterday, not necessarily so far this season. Jack Doohan, 19th. Obviously had that big, scary crash on Friday, which was all his fault. And hasn't really recovered since, because really Doohan should be in, at worst, around 14th or 15th on the grid, but 19th is just not cutting it, I'm afraid. And then Lance Stroll, 20th and last. But yeah, it's, I think, a good grid we've got. Again, whether it's dry or wet. And if you're wondering what the if you're wondering what the weather is going to be for the race today, it has rained overnight, I believe, but the chance of rain once the race starts, the chance of rain does diminish and get less. But that doesn't mean it's not going to be wet at any point of the Grand Prix. It might be that it's wet to start with and wet for the first few laps, and then they move on to dry tyres. That is a possibility. But if it is dry at the start, it will be a dry race, because, again, the chance of rain gets less as the race goes on. So, yeah. We'll see weather-wise what happens, but should be fine either way, really. Anyway, let's get into the sector times. First sector, of course, all about your downforce, and McLaren, just about the kings through that part of the lap. Mercedes, very good speed as well. Shane Russell couldn't show this exact speed in the first sector on his final lap, where obviously he made that mistake in the final lap of Q3. Max in the Red Bull, though, keeping close, and that was really what was key for Max, is that he kept close enough to around what was the best sector times in each sector. But again, McLaren did not deliver with their drivers the absolute best sectors for each part of the lap on that final lap. It was at different parts of qualifying, unfortunately for them. Ferrari, disappointing, a tenth and a half off. If you remember after practice 2, they were actually the quickest team in the first sector. So yeah, disappointing. They should have been really right there with McLaren. We've seen so far this season in high-speed corners, they've got a good car, so there's no reason for them to be dropping that amount of time. But even if they were a tenth and a half quicker, it wouldn't really make a difference. They would still be 4th on the grid with Leclerc. So yeah, it wouldn't make much of a difference. Alpine, very good speed in the first sector. Same for Williams. Aston Martin, bit of a drop-off. They were pretty good in the first sector on Friday, but yeah, quite a drop-off for them. Haas, not too bad. Racing Bull, surprisingly low down, considering how good their car is in high-speed corners. But still was able to pull off the lap. And then Sauber, I have no idea why they're so far off in the first sector, but clearly that is the reason why they ended up 16th and 17th, and they were easily the slowest team in qualifying. And then the middle sector, you've got a mix of high-speed corners, medium speed, you've got the slow-speed hairpin, and a couple long acceleration zones. McLaren were very quick through here on Friday, and still on Saturday were pretty quick. Tenth and a half quicker than Leclerc. Again, with Ferrari, I don't really see in that part of the lap why they should be that far off. I think at least a tenth of a second they should be closer to McLaren through this part of the lap. Again, though, with Leclerc, if you add up the time, they should have been better in the first sector and the middle sector. Leclerc still would have been 4th on the grid. Max then in the Red Bull just behind, and then you can see Isaac Hadjar on the Racing Bulls pretty quick in the middle sector. Mercedes, though, pretty slow in the middle sector and not quite good enough, I'm afraid. They should be really at least a tenth and a half better to be right there with Ferrari and Red Bull. And if they were a tenth and a half better in the middle sector, Russell would have ended up probably ahead of Leclerc on the grid. Williams, not too bad. Haas, okay. Aston Martin, not great, but we saw that with the middle sector data in Friday practice that they also were not very quick through this part of the lap. Alpine, the second slowest, and this is really what cost them making Q3. Because as you'll see in a moment, they were pretty quick also in the final sector. So it was just this middle sector that cost them dearly. And then Sauber, the slowest. And then, as you can see with Alpine, look, 5th quickest behind the front 4 teams. McLaren, very quick in the final sector. Max, even closer to the McLarens in the final sector. The amount of lap time, by the way, that Max gained on Lando in that final chicane on that final lap was incredible. Not just with the late braking, but the preciseness with how he attacked the chicane. And that's why we say that this is a driver's circuit, because chicanes, for example, drivers really do make the difference through those parts of the lap. Mercedes, not too bad. Ferrari, not too bad either. Then, yeah, Alpine, very good in the final sector, but just that middle sector. If that middle sector was... let me see how far off they were. Yeah, if they were, say, a couple tenths of a second even quicker in the middle sector, they would have ended up probably 8th or 9th on the grid for today's race. So, watch out for Pierre Gasly. I think he'll be pretty strong in this race today. So yeah, Gasly and the Alpine looking strong. Racing Bulls, pretty decent. Williams, decent. Haas, right there as well. And then a bit of a drop-off to Sauber and then Aston Martin, who have, I believe, the slowest top speed of any team this weekend, which I will confirm that in a moment by looking at the top speeds. But yeah, with Max, again, he was not quickest in any of the sectors, but he was quick enough on that final lap in the sectors to deliver pole position. And that's what matters. It's all about delivering the lap when you most have to. You don't necessarily have to have the quickest sector in any part of the lap. It just needs to be good enough on average compared to your rivals. And then, you'll be on pole position. And that's what helped Max get it yesterday. Talking of the top speeds, let's go on to them. This speed trap data, by the way, is from the speed trap located at the end of the pit straight, right before they close the DRS going into turn 1. Jack Doohan, right at the top for Alpine. You may be thinking that's probably because he is opening his DRS a bit too long, like he was on Friday, but Gasly in the Alpine was also right up there as well. So Alpine do have a good top speed, and I think have clearly, just looking at the final sector time they did, have took a slight bit of wing off their car to be a bit quicker in the down the straights, and that hopefully for them should help them make a couple overtakes if they can. McLaren's top speed pretty good as well. Red Bull's right there as well. Maybe with McLaren you could argue that's why they didn't get pole, is maybe they, to be a bit quicker on the straights, maybe just took a bit too much downforce off, but it should have been good enough anyway. Mercedes right there, Ferrari right there, Williams right there. I've got to say the team's very close on their top speeds this weekend. And really, the only noticeable difference in the top speed charts here is that Aston Martin are the slowest, and if you compare them to a team like Alpine, 3 kilometers an hour slower, which is not a giant difference, but it is a slight enough difference that can allow, Gasly in the Alpine to out-qualify Fernando Alonso on the grid. So, yeah, Aston Martin struggling with their top speed, as we have seen so far this season. But if I just go back to the qualifying results, I just want to quickly go through what I think the pecking order will be today for this race, because as you may have noticed, normally I go through the long run data from Friday practice. Unfortunately, we can't do that today because practice 2 was so interrupted with red flags. The drivers really only got the chance to do 4 or 5 clean green flag laps. Some drivers got even less than that. So there was no way for the drivers to be able to do representative long runs in in practice 2. Now you may be saying, oh well, what about the data from practice 3? Maybe they did the long runs there, which they probably did. It would be irrelevant to do that for practice 3 because the conditions in practice 3 quite a bit different from when the race start time is. So that's why I did not decide to do that. But in qualifying yesterday, I honestly do think Red Bull had probably the 3rd or 4th best car, which again is what makes Max Verstappen's lap just so incredible and just amazing in general. And yeah, I think in the race today, I don't think Red Bull will have the quickest car in race conditions. In clear air, McLaren will have the fastest car. For McLaren, it's just about where they can utilize and get clear air in this Grand Prix to be able to show that. Second quickest in clean air, I reckon, will be probably just about Mercedes, and then 3rd, Red Bull, 4th, Ferrari, 5th. Honestly, I'm going to go Haas 5th because of just how good they were with their race pace a couple weeks ago in Shanghai. I think they'll be replicating that here. And then 6th, I'll go... It's really between Williams and Racing Bulls. I can't really decide between, 6th and 7th there. And then 8th, probably Alpine. 9th, Aston Martin. And 10th, I would go, obviously, Sauber. But yeah, the midfield is very hard to call. It really, really is. But let's get on to my final predictions for the race today. And these predictions, by the way, is for this race in the dry. I did not account for whether it was going to rain because I didn't believe when I made these predictions that it would be a wet race. And just about after taking an amazing pole position, Max Verstappen, I believe, will just hang on for victory here in Japan for the 4th year running. Oscar Piastri, I think, will finish in second, just behind Max. Lando Norris will be third, with Russell 4th, Leclerc 5th, Antonelli 6th, Hamilton 7th, and then Behrman 8th, Albon 9th, Hadjar 10th. And as you can see, Behrman, Albon, and Hadjar, the gaps I've gone there, very close. And I think it'll be very close between those cars. And then very close behind Hadjar, I think you'll have, Gasly, Alonso, Lawson, Tsunoda, right there, and Sainz as well, right in there, very closely fighting for a point. It's going to be some battle in the midfielders. By the way, Sky F1 have just started their coverage, and Max is just walking to the car that he gets toured around in for the drivers' parade. The pit straight looks damp, but I wouldn't say it's wet enough for intermediate tyres if they were to start the race now. If they were to start the race now, I think they would probably start on dry tyres, even though it'd be a bit treacherous in certain areas. But there you go. So yeah, that's my race prediction. I think Max Verstappen wins. Do you think Max can hold on for what would be an incredible race win? Let me know in the chat or in the poll running in the chat. That poll will keep running until right before lights out here in Japan. And make sure as well, if you haven't already, smash a like button on this stream. Does help the channel and the algorithm, help the channel grow. And also helps show me that you guys enjoy the content. And also don't forget to subscribe for more content like this. And check out my latest videos. The last video I did about just over a week ago, a Ferrari video, which is in the description, the link to that video, about how Ferrari's 2025 championship chances are almost over. And, after today's Grand Prix, if they don't get on the podium, I think, constructors-wise, it'll even more confirm to me that it is over for them. But, yeah. Just give me a second, guys, to get the countdown back. There you go. Hour and 26 minutes until lights out. But yeah, it's not raining at the track at the moment. And if it does stay dry from now on, then, yeah, it should be a dry start. But what is good about the rain overnight and early this morning at Suzuka is what it's done is washed away the rubber laid down from yesterday and Friday, not just by the F1 cars but the other support races, meaning that will accelerate tyre wear because of it being a green track and there not being that rubber down on the circuit. So that will make for, in terms of pit stops and strategy, that will make for a more interesting race on that end. But let me just quickly get up on my end what the predicted race strategies are for this Japanese Grand Prix, according to Pirelli. And according to Pirelli, the quickest strategy is a one-stop race, which is not a surprise. The two ways you can do a one-stop here in Japan, according to Pirelli, is to start on the medium compound tyre, pit between lap 19 and 25, and then finish the race on the set hard tyres. That is the absolute bog-standard one-stop strategy, which I think we might see today. I think there will be certain teams, though, that may go for an earlier pit stop than, say, lap 20-ish, if they do start on the mediums. especially if they're fighting other cars. And the other option is to start on the soft compound tyre, pit between lap 10 and 16, and then finish the race on a set of hard tyres. Maybe we'll see that. We'll have to see. Wouldn't be surprised if Yuki Tsunoda tries that, just to get himself up the order a bit. But there are some two-stop options. You could start on the soft compound tyre, pit between lap 8 and 14, and then go into a set of mediums, and then pit again between lap 28 and 34, and finish the race on a set of hard tyres. And then the second two-stop option is to start on the mediums, pit between lap 13 and 19, then go into a set of hard tyres, pit again between lap 34 and 40, and then finish the race on a set of mediums. I think we could see a two-stop race today, especially up front with the top three. And the reason I say that is because with McLaren, obviously they've got the faster car than Max in the Red Bull. And I think it would be silly for McLaren to just copy whatever strategy Red Bull do and hope they're just naturally quick enough. They are going to need McLaren a tyre offset to beat Max for the race win, unless of course they get into the lead on the first lap, which if they do that, then that's job done really for them. But chances are Max will hold the lead into turn one. It's been a while since the leader of the pack, the person on pole, has lost the lead into turn one. Doesn't happen that many times in recent years at Suzuka. The last time I remember it happening was 2019, where Ferrari locked out the front row and then ended up about second and fifth by the end of lap one. But before then, you'd have to go back to probably 2015, I think, or 2013 or something like that for the last time the pole sitter lost the lead into turn one. Chances are Max Verstappen will maintain the lead into turn one. And like I said, McLaren are then going to need a tyre offset to get ahead at some point of Verstappen to win this race. And what I mean by a tyre offset is having fresher tyres, whether that's an undercut or going for a few laps longer on the strategy to have fresher tyres for the end of the race. Something like that is what McLaren need to do in this race today. But if I was McLaren, I would be prepared, especially if the top three can pull away quite a bit from the pack behind. I would be prepared to split strategy and maybe say put Lando on a two-stop and Oscar on a one-stop race, or maybe Oscar on a two-stop and Lando on a one-stop race, just to force Red Bull into, doing something rather than letting them dictate strategy. I think McLaren need to be the one dictating strategy today if they want to be winning this Grand Prix. So, yeah, we'll see if McLaren do that. Again, personally, that's what I would do. I would say put Lando on a two-stop, pit him, but say around lap 15 for, say, another set of mediums. And then, pit him again, say lap 35 for a set of hards. And then with Oscar, pit him at least by lap 20. And maybe follow Max on a one-stop strategy if Max does go for the one-stop strategy. That's what I would do. And I think it's definitely worth doing, especially if McLaren and Max can pull away from the pack behind by a decent rate of knots. But, yeah, we have got an hour and 20 minutes to go until this race begins. Brooks saying Nib should be on for the race. Yes, he should. He should. He asked me, I think, when I wanted him to come on, and I said about an hour before the race. So, and I'm pretty sure he saw it, and agreed. So, yeah, he should be on in about 20-25 minutes' time. I hope he hasn't overslept or anything. He really shouldn't oversleep because this is a perfect race for him in terms of the time. The race starts for him at like 3 or 4 p.m. in the afternoon, but I know he has a bit of a wacky sleep schedule, so he can watch football and tennis and all of that. So yeah. So yeah, he should be on soon. And we'll get his thoughts, obviously, ahead of this Grand Prix. Um, None that you know says hello, Chazza. Yeah, Nib is going to be on the stream. Don't worry about that. Nicholas says I actually excited, was hoping that Yuki would win, but I'm glad he'll get it if he gets a top 10. Yeah, I think believing Tsunoda could win this Grand Prix was quite ambitious. Let's just say that. But if he can have a lot of pace today and finish in the top 10, then I don't think you could really ask a ton more of him, at least in the race. And personally with Tsunoda, I would definitely put Tsunoda on a 2-stop strategy, because I mean, what have you got to lose? Plus, normally the thing that harms a 2-stop or an extra pit stop race is traffic and having to get your way through that. Here at Suzuka, though, you can overtake it. You absolutely can overtake in probably 2 or 3 different spots. So if they were to, I'd say, start Tsunoda on the soft compound tire, and then pit him around, say, lap 10, get him on a set of mediums, and then get him on a set of hard tires for the final, say, 20-25 laps. I think Tsunoda would be able to make the progress needed through the field. I don't think it's worth Tsunoda just running long into the race and hoping he'll have fresh enough tyres for the end to just blitz through the field. That's personally what I would do. I would start him on the soft tyre, pit him on lap 10, and then undercut his way through the pack. And then, hopefully Tsunoda can push as hard as possible on those, say, mediums, and then get onto a set of hard tyres, and then hopefully finish the race in the top 10. I think if he copies what everyone else does and does a one-stop race, I think there's less chance of a points finish, if I'm being honest. Dream Black Music says Oscar continues his march towards the championship. Not quite. I mean, if he was on pole today, like he probably should have been if he had not messed up that first sector, then you probably could say that. But, I mean, even though he's on third on the grid, though, he could still win today. There is no doubt about that. We have seen, drivers win from outside of the front row here before here at Suzuka. 2019, for example, Valtteri Bottas got an amazing start from third to first into the first corner, and then he absolutely dominated the race. That's what Piastri needs to do today. That would be a real rubber stamp of approval of his championship bid. Remember, Piastri is what, 10 points, is it, behind? I think, in the championship. Behind Lando Norris, obviously, who is in the lead. So, really, for Piastri, as long as he beats Lando today, then that is good enough, I would say. If Max wins because Max is Max, then fair enough. But for Oscar, he just needs to beat Lando. Whilst Lando really needs to just win the race, because Lando, you could argue, is still likely to be McLaren's main challenger for the championship, even though I'm not quite sure about that, but you could argue that at least based on what we saw last season. And obviously, Max Verstappen was his main rival last year, and he has to make sure he gets on top of things, early on. So, yeah, Lando has to win the race today. Where with Piastri, I don't think necessarily Piastri does have to win today. I think, as long as Oscar can beat Lando, even if Oscar finishes in second, I think Oscar would be still pretty happy with that. For Max Verstappen, though, Max absolutely has to win this race today. Even though, yes, he doesn't necessarily have the fastest car. I mean, he absolutely does not have the fastest car. It's probably the third best car at the absolute best. He's on pole. The chance is right there for him to win, given how great he is. So he has to win this Grand Prix. And if he was to win this Grand Prix, it would be a massive, I wouldn't say turning point, but a massive moment in the championship, because it would absolutely solidify that not only is Max a strong championship contender, but that Max is going to be still very, very, very hard to beat, especially once that Red Bull car improves, which it will. This Red Bull car is not that great at the moment, but it will get better. There is no doubt about it. Red Bull are not going to remain this poor compared to their usual standards for the whole season. That's not going to happen. We know that Red Bull tend to make their car better as the season goes on. We know that from experience. So, this would be a massive win for Max Verstappen. And we'll see if we can get that win. But let me see if we've got a couple more comments. Hello to Nib. Good to see you, mate. And obviously, I'll bring him on soon. And Drew also saying, hey, no bogus technical infringement accusations yet this weekend. Yet. Yeah, thankfully not. I'm sick to death of the mini DRS thing. I think people overblow the difference it makes. I don't think it makes as big of a difference people claim it does. There are legitimately some people out there that think McLaren, the only reason they've got a quick car is because of that, which is just not true. It's just an added bonus that gives them maybe an extra, tenth, maybe a couple tenths at the absolute maximum, but I don't even think that's the amount that they get really from it. It's like putting the icing on top, or it's not the icing, the cherry on top of the cake. That's pretty much what that is. Fundamentally, McLaren have a very quick car, and it's not because it's illegal or it's mini DRS or whatever. It's just a fundamentally very fast racing car. Drew saying, although Hadjar had a testicle infringement, yeah, quite uncomfortable qualifying was for Isaac. I saw a funny tweet that, what was it? Hadjar was able to massively outshine Lawson despite having his balls, what was it? Squashed or something in the cockpit. What was the tweet? It was they used an actual term for it. I can't remember what it was, but it was a funny tweet. But yeah, great performance despite that. And yeah, they put water in the tires. There's Nib. Yeah, another just ridiculous theory. I think I think I saw was it a week or so ago? I don't know if it was from Red Bull or a source from Red Bull, but it it was something like that, where they were still going on about that thing. And it's just, give it up, please. And I don't know if it used to be this way 20 or 30 years ago, because obviously I wasn't watching Formula One back then, but the teams are such crybabies. Like, if another team's quicker than them, they can't just accept they're quicker. It must be an illegal part or an illegal, water in the tyres, DRS secretly open, or can't just be that they've got a faster car. No, must be illegal. I don't remember teams being, were the teams this much of a crybaby? I mean, probably 20 years ago they were, but in the 90s or the 80s, I don't think they were necessarily as bad. But it just pisses me off. Like, McLaren have a faster car than Red Bull and have done for nearly a year now. No matter what Red Bull theorize, they have a slower car. And, should just give credit where credit's due, rather than just, never admitting that McLaren actually have a good car. They were saying, yeah, they reckon Rob Marshall knows how. Just absolutely ridiculous, isn't it? But, yeah. The teams, like I said, absolute crybabies. A lot of them can't accept anyone being quicker than them. But as they're actually doing an interview or a piece on Sky F1 about Oscar Piastri, just to let you guys know, with Oscar Piastri, is I think today is his birthday. And we'll see if the birthday boy can get the win. Like I said, third place has won this Grand Prix before in 2019. And, well, even drivers from even lower on the grid than that have won the Japanese Grand Prix. Obviously, Kimi Raikkonen famously won this race from, I think, was it 17th on the grid in 2005. Alonso won this race once from 5th on the grid. So, yeah, it is possible to win from outside the front row. Absolutely. But you do need to have a lot of pace to pull it off. And we know Oscar has a lot of pace, especially with the car he's in. Anyway, just going to hide this timer quick. So I just want to go through the teams quickly and just go through my expectations for them. And also, strategically, what I think certain teams could or should do to enhance their race result today. So we'll start with McLaren. And like I said, if they are second and third at the end of lap 1, then I personally would split the strategy and put one of the drivers on a 2-stop and one on a 1-stop. I would probably honestly, I'd probably go for whoever the higher placed driver is on lap 1. I would keep on the 1-stop strategy and then put the lower placed McLaren on the 2-stop. And the reason that is because, again, I don't think McLaren have enough pace to do the same strategy as what Max does with both cars and still beat Max. I just don't think McLaren have got enough pace to be able to do that. So they've got to try something different, and that's what I would do. Whether it's Oscar on the 2-stop or Lando on the 2-stop, that's what I would do. Because it would then force possibly Max and Red Bull into doing something different from what they wanted to do. But also, because fresh tyres are, are very effective here at Suzuka, especially with the green track we're going to have now all the rubber's washed away, it could work. It's not impossible. So, yeah, that's what I would do. That's what I would try. If they can get, though, McLaren, a car into the lead at the end of the first lap, then they won't need to try that. And I think at that point, they could probably just keep both drivers on a 1-stop strategy and still at least win the Grand Prix if they do get into the lead on the first lap of the race. So, yeah, after that first lap, we'll see how it is. But again, if they are still second and third, then in my view, they've got to split the strategy. For Red Bull and Max Verstappen, I think if McLaren do decide to split the strategy, the one thing they cannot do is fall for McLaren, doing that. Let's say Oscar is in third and he pits on lap 15, which would be a decent time to pit if you're on a two-stop strategy. The last thing Red Bull need to do is respond to Oscar, especially if it becomes clear or clear enough that Oscar is on a two-stop strategy. The absolute thing they need to do is keep their heads in that situation and just stick to what they are going to do. And I think what Red Bull want to do, and probably should try to do, is the simple, basic one-stop strategy, which would be start on the medium, pit on lap 20, go on to the hard tyre, and then finish the race on that tyre. That is the simple strategy here at Suzuka, and that is what, if they can, that's what they need to do. They cannot allow themselves to get flustered by McLaren possibly splitting the strategy. And if McLaren end up beating Red Bull and Max because they go for a two-stop order on their cars and they split their strategy, then fair enough. Red Bull don't have a car that is really fast enough to compete with McLaren, at least in clear air. So, if McLaren win because of a strategy mix-up, fair enough. But if they fall for McLaren's antics on strategy, then that really could open the door for McLaren to, win the Grand Prix. So they just got to keep their cool, which I'm sure they will. Obviously, they've been in this position a million times. Very experienced team. And just got to stick to what they want to do. And whatever McLaren do. But yeah, they just got to stick to what they want to do with their strategy. For Ferrari, I don't really see what they can do, to be honest. They need a podium today. Absolutely need a podium, especially with Charles Leclerc, who I think is their main threat on the Drivers' Championship side. If Leclerc can finish in third, that would be a great result for him and the team, and would keep Leclerc at least somewhat in the championship discussion. But if Leclerc was to finish where I predicted him to finish, which is P5, then it's pretty much gone already, the Drivers' Championship, given how far already behind they are. So yeah, that's what Ferrari need. But what can they do to get on the podium? One thing they need to hope for is that Max Verstappen is leading at the end of the first lap, because if Max starts to hold up the McLarens quite a bit to the point where Leclerc and the Mercedes cars and Hamilton even keep up with the top three, then that keeps Ferrari right there in contention for a podium. If that doesn't happen and the top three pull away, then yeah, Ferrari are in a bit of trouble. I think what I would do with Ferrari is go for a one-stop strategy, but I would split the strategy with the two drivers in terms of Leclerc. I would pit, say, on lap 20, the usual one-stop pit lap to go onto a set of hard tyres. With Lewis Hamilton, though, I would like to see him go a few laps longer than his teammate. Say, until, if he starts on the medium, say until lap 24, 25, just to have a few lap fresher tyres, and then maybe come back at the Mercedes cars later in the race with those fresher tyres. But like I said, if Ferrari can get a podium today, that's what they need to aim for. There's no way they're going to win the race today. They just don't have the pace to do so. But a podium, it is possible. You never know what can happen in the top three. We could have a DNF up there between the two McLarens and Verstappen. And again, if Max doesn't have a lot of pace in the race and is holding up the McLarens a lot, that could keep Leclerc and Ferrari in the game, and maybe could allow, say, Ferrari to go for an undercut at some point in the or during the pit stop window. So yeah, it's going to be a tricky race for Ferrari today. given we know their race pace is not that great and where they are on the grid. So if you're a Ferrari fan, I wouldn't have that bigger hopes. But if they can, they need, again, that podium. Mercedes, third row of the grid, really should be fourth and sixth for them rather than fifth and sixth. Russell just messing up his final lap of qualifying. But yeah, I think Mercedes today absolutely can beat Ferrari. I'd be surprised if they got on the podium. If they could get on the podium yet again with Russell, that would be absolutely brilliant. But really, I think Mercedes, their aim should be fourth and fifth. If they can finish fourth and fifth, I think that would be a pretty good result, considering where they're at the moment in Formula One. And, for the Constructors' Championship especially, would be a really good amount of points. That'd be 22 points for them on the Constructors' side, and would keep them comfortably ahead of Red Bull and Ferrari as well. So that is realistically what the aim should be. Again, though, if Russell does have the pace to finish on the podium and he can get it, then that would be an absolutely brilliant result for him in the Mercedes car that has obviously finished on the podium in the first couple races. And remember, Russell is only 9 points, I think, behind Lando in the championship. So if Russell was to finish in third and Lando finished in second, then yeah, wouldn't be giving away too many points, thankfully, in the championship battle. Because Mercedes are another team that, once they get some upgrades on that car, they'll be right in there, I'm sure. So yeah, we'll see what happens in Mercedes. But yeah, if they could at least finish fourth and sixth or fourth and fifth, I think that would be good enough for them coming out of this Grand Prix weekend. Strategically, I think we might see one of the cars go maybe a slight bit longer than say Leclerc and the Ferrari, maybe a couple laps longer, but I don't think really they're going to try anything that different, and I don't think they really need to get the result that they really should get in this race today. One key thing, by the way, for Russell to finish on the podium is to get ahead of Leclerc at the start. If he can do it straight away, then he's right in there, no doubt, in the fight for a podium. Aston Martin have got Alonso 12th on the grid. Aston Martin have been struggling a lot with their top speed, but that doesn't matter so much in the race because top speed only really helps you in qualifying. It can help you in the race, keep position or overtake into turn one, but in all the other parts of the lap where you need grip, doesn't really help. So, sorry, let me just clear my throat a second. So yeah, Aston Martin, in the other parts of the lap where you need downforce, they've got a decent amount of it. So watch out for Alonso. I think he could be, Alonso, a driver that does go quite a bit longer than other midfield runners into the race. I think Lance Stroll in 20th is definitely going to do that. Lance, I think, will definitely start on the hard compound tyre. Probably run 35 laps, maybe even 40 laps, into the race before pitting. Remember in Shanghai, he did a very long first stint before coming in. I think that's really his only hope of getting a decent result, is doing the same. And maybe for Alonso, even if he starts on the medium, that might be the only way for Alonso to get a top 10 and to score his first point of the season. For Pierre Gasly and the Alpine, watch out for him and for Alpine. They've got a decent car this weekend. Strategically, I'm not sure really what they can do. Much different from the midfield. Just not pit too early is really the only thing I can say. For Jack Doohan in 19th, hopefully he can finish the race with no penalties and no damage to his car or anything like that. He's had a pretty, I guess, wild start to his Formula One career, especially after Friday practice, where, I'm sorry, he was a complete fucking idiot for what he did in practice. Trying to keep the DRS open into turn 1 because it works in a simulator. Again, just absolute stupidity from doing. And a lot of people online taking the piss out of him for what he said and did. And rightfully so, because it was so stupid what he did, and was lucky to get away with it. For Haas, they're a dark horse today. Watch out for Oliver Behrman. They were very quick, this team, over a race distance in Shanghai. No reason why Behrman can't be pretty quick in the race distance today. Behrman as well did not do that great of a final run in Q3, so there is more pace in that car than what was shown at the end of qualifying. So, yeah, watch out for Oliver Behrman. I think he's a strong contender to finish in 8th or 9th place. Racing Bulls, of course, got Isaac Hadjar up there in 7th. The issue with Racing Bulls in the last Grand Prix was, one, they did a 2-stop strategy and it didn't work. But also, they pitted too early in that Grand Prix. They need to try and go a bit longer and not get easily triggered into a pit stop. Because I do feel as though that's really why they didn't score any points in Shanghai when they should have, because they were very quick in Shanghai. But yeah, they messed up the strategy and then they ended up not scoring any points. So yeah, they just need to make sure they just don't pit too early, because that will really cost them, I think, later on. And hopefully, if it is proven the 2-stop strategy is not the way to go, hopefully they don't decide to go for it. For Williams, Alex Albon, 9th on the grid. Watch out for him. He's had a great season so far. He is 6th in the championship, and he's just been so good. Out qualifying Carlos Sainz for the 3rd race running. What a season Alex Albon is having. And I think he'll be pretty strong today. Definitely, I think we'll finish in the top 9. Whether he'll finish 8th ahead of, say, Behrman and Hadjar and obviously the rest of the midfield, it's going to be close. It's going to be very close. But he can do it. No doubt about it. He obviously has experience around this circuit that Hadjar and Behrman does not have. And that Williams car, I think, is better in race conditions than the Racing Bulls car is. So that does help him, I think, going forward for this Grand Prix. Watch out for Carlos Sainz, 15th on the grid. Had a 3-place penalty because of holding up Lewis Hamilton. Surely he can make up some positions from there. Remember, Sainz was on the podium here last year for Ferrari, so he can definitely do a bit better. And then Sauber are the slowest team, and yeah, no chance for points finish, I'm afraid. But we have got just over 50 minutes to go until the race gets underway here in Suzuka. And I will, in a moment, bring Nib on. Let me just quickly read out some final comments before I do, and then I'll bring Nib on in a second. Raymond, will it rain? Probably not. The track is slightly damp, but it will be dry, I think, for the race start. I don't think we're going to see any rain in the race. It should be dry. Todd says Supermax time, hoping for the best. Let's go, Yuki. Todd also says McLaren has the better tyre dead. Going to be tough to beat them. Absolutely. And Todd saying, just watch the replay of doing crash. Rookie mistake aside, I'm looking forward to no more DRS as it is now. Did the Alpine take a new tub? Looked massive. Yeah, they had to replace a lot of the car, unfortunately. But again, just massive mistake there from doing. I can't explain why he decided, honestly, to do what he did, but that's what he did. And he was lucky he didn't come away with any serious injuries, because that was a big crash. But let me now bring Nib on. Let me just get things ready quick. And yeah, we'll just get him on. Right, are you there?
Hello.
Yeah, there you go. How are you?
I am pretty good, mate. How are you?
Absolutely fucked is what I am. I, I have had 4 hours sleep, I think.
Oh,
Um,
that's all right.
no, it's absolute murder is what it is. I was out yesterday. I was out all day yesterday. Got probably a bit of a sunburn as well. So yeah, I was absolutely fucked by the
Oh,
time I
not the
got in.
sunburn when it's about 12 degrees.
Oh, come on. Yeah, it's beautiful summer's day all across the UK yesterday. But
Mate, winter's starting to hit here. It's 19 degrees.
oh god. um, one thing I will say actually was funny with qualifying yesterday was when they showed the temperature at Suzuka. It was actually, I think, about the same temperature as it is here. Yet everyone here is dressed like it's the middle of the summer, and everyone at Suzuka's dressed like it's like an autumnal type feel, which it pretty much is. As just seeing Sonoda being interviewed and Umbrella being put up for him, so maybe some rain falling at the minute. Not a lot though. Um, yeah. How much are you looking forward to this race, especially with a lot different of a top three than what we were expecting? We were expecting McLaren to easily get the front row and just easily win the race, but with Max on pole, this could be, couldn't it, a really, I wouldn't say classic race, but a really good competitive race from lap 1 to lap 53.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you'd expect the McLarens to have the pace over Max in the race, no doubt about it. But then, of course, the dirty air and the DRS become quite a big factor. And as you mentioned previously, that with the rain that has fallen over the Suzuka circuit, there could be, um, or the track will certainly be a lot greener and potentially a bit more tire wear, which could make things a bit more interesting and a lot more interesting than the Chinese Grand Prix, where that two stop never really developed into occurring.
Yeah, I think, like you said, the track being green, that might help push some teams towards a two-stop race here. And talking of, obviously, Max on pole, obviously I watched qualifying live and I genuinely could not believe what I saw. Just from what you saw of his lap, and obviously I know you rewatched Q3. Do you think with Max, with that lap, do you think that's his best ever pole position?
That's got to be right up there, no doubt, because you can see how much the car is like constantly understeering because they've just got to tune out so much of the oversteer of the car. I don't know if you watched the ghost comparison between his and Lando's lap, but the understeer he had going out of Dunlop, also going into Dunlop curve, was lost him about a tenth and a half, but he was able to claw most of that back in the final chicane. I mean, just extraordinary. But I mean, McLaren no doubt should have had pole. I think Piastri showed in his final run that they should have been on pole by at least a couple of tenths. Piastri, I believe, made a mistake in turn two on his final lap in Q3, and then went purple, and gained 3 tenths in the last two sectors over Max. So definitely McLaren messed up, but just an absolutely unbelievable lap by Max, who's just continuing to prove why he is, without doubt, an all-time great.
Absolutely, that lap was just incredible, and especially like you said, if you go watch Max's onboard lap, and even the Ghost comparison with Lando, the front end difference between the McLaren and the Red Bull is massive, and still,
Even the Mercedes.
yeah, exactly. I know, especially what was it, the spoon entry to the spoon curve, especially like it was just incredible how the front end of the Red Bull just went absolutely nowhere near the apex, and he still somehow got away with it. It's just yeah, incredible what he was able to do with that car. And I would say, I mean, he's already had a lot of pole positions in his career, but I can't think of another pole position that is as good as that. Even if you go back to the days where he definitely did not have the fastest car back in, say, 2017, 18, 19. I can't think of a pole position from then that was from him. The rare times he was on pole, I can't think really of a pole position where it was as good as that. So yeah, it quite possibly was the best pole position lap of his career, and one of the best pole laps we've seen. In terms of obviously getting way more out of the car than is really there. In years, just absolutely incredible. With the Red Bull though, how it obviously we'll get onto the whole Tsunoda and Lawson thing in a moment, but in the pecking order, where do you think legitimately that Red Bull is? Do you think it is legit slower than the Racing Bulls car? In the whole pecking order, where would you put it? Like fourth, fifth?
It's at least 4. Sorry, at most, it's the 4th quickest car.
Yeah,
Um,
that is just
like
incredible.
it's just so on edge, as Max very nicely put in the FIA press conference afterwards. Uh, say that you'd poop the pants driving the car, or poopy pants. I think that's what he said. Yeah, I mean, it's just a car which only Max can handle. And it's gone just more and more extreme over the years. Um, that Max is just unbelievable. And I don't know what they're showing on Sky at the moment. Assume it can only be an animation of driving style differences between, say, Lawson and Verstappen. I mean, I'm not going to unmute the stream to listen to that idiot who's driving the car right now, who that's Jacques Villeneuve, in case anyone is unaware of who's on the screen on Sky F1 at the moment. But yeah, I mean, Max is just unbelievable, and I'd say at at absolute best, it's the fourth fastest car. No way, it's better than that.
Yeah, I'd say yeah, probably you're about right. I mean, the Racing Bulls, maybe you could say it's not as quick as the Red Bull, but it's definitely a lot more comfortable to drive, as we've already seen with
Yeah,
Yuki Tsunoda and what he's done this weekend, and obviously what Liam Lawson has done in comparison. I know Lawson ended up not doing a good lap, but I mean, even on Friday, Lawson was what in the top five, only slightly slower than Hadjar, and was doing a great job. Meanwhile, Sonoda, when he's been able to do soft tyre runs, has been regularly out of the top 10. Um, yeah, with that whole Sonoda and Lawson situation, do you, now that we clearly, obviously see that the Red Bull is as bad as it is, and that's why Sonoda is where he is, and probably was why Lawson was where he was in the first couple races. Do you have a lot more sympathy now for Liam Lawson? And in general, what do you think Red Bull should do driver lineup wise? Do you think they should just keep it now for Verstappen and Sonoda, or switch back, or what do you think they should do there?
do I have sympathy for Lawson? I don't think so. Um, I just think that they did probably make the right decision. I know Marco mentioned that it was just best to get Lawson out of the firing line, out of the pressure of Red Bull, because I think you could see now. Yes, this car is very very on edge and hard to drive, but you could see that the pressure had definitely gotten to Lawson. Um, I think ultimately they have made the right decision, and I think there's no question that they've got to keep this driver lineup until the end of the season. This is the best lineup that they're going to be able to have for the rest of the year. I don't think there's any question about that. They just have to hope that Sonoda is able to get to grips with this car, and of course that it improves in, is it 2 races time?
No,
After Bahrain, is that when they're bringing their upgrades?
it's supposed to be next week in Bahrain. That's what
Next week in Bahrain.
that's what Marco said. Yeah. So yeah, I personally, yeah, I would keep it now, Verstappen and Tsunoda, because I think it's now been proven that, yeah, no matter who you put in that car out of the Red Bull driver pool of, Tsunoda, Hadjar, Lawson, or even if you brought back Perez, it doesn't matter. They're all going to struggle because the car is just very hard to drive, and only Max really can drive it. It reminds me, I mean, it was kind of for different reasons back then, but it kind of reminds me when Michael Schumacher was at Benetton, where his teammates would be absolutely almost at opposite ends of the grid because the car was almost completely different to what Michael had. That was a lot down to the team only really caring about Michael back then, but it's kind of similar in how back then Michael had basically a different car. I mean, Johnny Herbert, I think, even said when he was at Benetton that his car was significantly different to what Michael's had in terms of just the way it handled and all of that. And that's pretty much what's gone on with Red Bull. Max is obviously the clear number one and likes his cars a very particular certain way. And obviously the car in general at the moment is not quite good enough to be the quickest. Or else Max would have been on pole by about half a second yesterday. And, everyone who jumps in that car alongside him is going to struggle because it's just not the, he can cope well with what that Red Bull car presents challenge wise, but no one else really can. So, yeah. I think the only thing that will help Tsunoda is just simply, the Red Bull car just getting better. And if it gets better over the season to the point where it's maybe, say, the best car in the second half of the year, then hopefully we'll start to see Tsunoda scoring points regularly and maybe even fighting in the top few positions if he can really get hooked up with the car. As by the way, the cars are going around on their laps to the grid and they're on dry tyres, and the track is dry, but damp in areas, but not. It looks damp really offline. So it's going to be pretty sure a dry race. What else was I gonna ask you about? How much of a I maybe I shouldn't say this, but I am gonna say it. How much of a complete fucking idiot is Jack doing for what he did on Friday?
Yeah, I still can't quite believe it. I mean, I yeah, things work in the simulator that don't work in real life. And I wonder if he had tried it with only like the soft tire, where it perhaps could have worked, whereas he had a lot less grip on the hard tire. Like I'm still baffled that he even attempted it, especially when he's under the pump
Yeah.
the way he is, where quite clearly Flavio just wants to get rid of him, and he's just giving Flavio even more reasons to get rid of him. Like his actual raw pace really hasn't been too bad, but he's just making far too many mistakes. And I must say, it was quite an interesting decision to not have him in the car in FP1. To have was it the Toyota Japanese WEC driver that they had in the car instead?
Yeah, there's someone in there. I can't remember the guy's name, but yeah, like you said, when he's not making mistakes, his pace is fine. He's just been very erratic. And I mean, if you look at the two races he's had so far, crashed out in Melbourne on the first lap, and then in Shanghai got a penalty despite all that hard defense he did. But even in like the sprint race, had I think an accident with someone. He just he is trying very hard. He's got good pace. It's just he can't nail it down and keep it all nice and consistent. And would not be surprised if this triple header is the last time we see doing in a Formula One car. Would not be shocked if Colapinto's in the car in Miami in a month from now, because doing what he did on Friday is not going to impress anyone in that team, no matter how hard he's trying to make it work. But yeah, just absolutely just so silly from him. And yeah, we've got just over half an hour to go until the race begins. Todd asking, did Jack admit to purposely leaving DRS open? Well, it doesn't matter if he did or not, because you could literally see it on the onboard, the rear-facing camera, that, yeah, the DRS was open until he obviously slammed on the brakes because the car spun. That's what he was, that's what he was trying to do. Normally the drivers, they close the DRS before the first couple corners, and that's how it usually works. But Doohan thought he would try it, and was lucky to get away with it. Thank God, in a way, we don't have what we used to have in the V8 days, where you could use DRS wherever you wanted in qualifying or free practice, because God knows what Doohan would do with that.
What was last year? That was 2011, was it?
No, I think 2012. I think was the. I'm pretty sure 2012. Yeah, they were allowed to.
Yeah, well, I mean, Oliver Oakes, the Alpine team principal, confirmed that it was something that they'd practiced in the simulator and was done on purpose. So, yeah, there's no doubt he didn't just forget to close it.
Yeah, and that's proof right there that the simulator's great, but it doesn't. Can't mimic real life that much. By the way, Rooks, I have just posted the link a couple of minutes ago, but cheers for reminding me. Hadjar complaining about a loose seat. Basically the positioning, I think, of his belts was not very comfortable for him, and did well to still get through the session, and then eventually they found a solution, and that's what allowed him to get back on the pace and qualify 7th.
He said there's a new issue. I can't find the team radio. It was just before Sky went to the break. He come on the team radio and there's a new issue.
He
said, so I unlocked a new problem. The seat is moving. I'm okay, but the seat is not attached.
I honestly don't get how that's still a problem. I mean, it's not like this track is like that bumpy compared to other tracks. So I don't get that. So we'll see if they can fix that. They should be able to. There's still a decent amount of time before the race. I mean, they did find a bit of a solution yesterday. I think it only took them a few minutes, so they might have to come up with a quick solution again. Let me just read a couple comments if I can. Max the car whisperer. Pretty much, at this point. David asking if Max holds up both McLarens, will Leclerc have a chance to get a podium? If Max is holding up the McLarens a lot, then theoretically Leclerc should be able to hang on, but I don't think he will be able to hang on because the Ferrari, I just don't think is quick enough over a race distance to be trusted. And that's another thing with Ferrari. Obviously, I made my video a week ago saying I already think the Constructors' Championship is basically is over for them because they're already too far behind and already too slow. With this weekend and just in general, how disappointed are you with Ferrari? I mean, they are going to probably get better at some point, but it's been such a disappointing start, hasn't it? Given obviously the hype, but just if you look at the way they ended last season, they're just not even really on that level, are they, anymore?
Yeah, but honestly, I kind of expected it after pre-season testing. Like things didn't look very good, and yeah, it's just panned out to be that way. I mean, yeah, they'll get good again, like in the back half of the year, but as they always seemingly do. But just you still can't trust them yet.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, as you said, after testing, we did see some worrying signs, such as the race pace being quite a bit off. But I was hoping at least they would have enough quali pace to be like fighting and qualifying. But yeah, they just don't have it. And yeah, Ferrari most likely going to end up with another year without a championship yet again, as we've got just under half an hour to go at a cold, miserable looking Suzuka that is now overcast rather than wet. But let me try and find a couple more comments in the chat. Sam Lewis says, I don't think Max has the race speed. Think that pole was just a wizard lap. Possibly. We'll see. Hello to Yanni. Good to see you. Yanni saying, I think Max's qualifying lap may have broken Lando. He probably broke a lot of drivers mentally, seeing what he did. Very high praise, by the way, from Fernando Alonso right after the pole lap, saying that Max is the only driver that can do that, from a driver that used to do that. Obviously, back when he was at Ferrari, just doing unbelievable lap times or race performances. Miss Marquis says Flavio was the one that told the media it was driver error. Speaks volumes about what he's thinking about his rookie. Well, I mean, it is driver error.
Technically, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, and yeah, you could say, if you were to argue for doing, you'd say, well, practice is for practicing and practicing maybe new solutions to try and maybe increase speed of the lap. But the last thing your team wants is a complete wreck of a car, which is what he delivered them after Friday practice. So yeah, and yeah, doing obviously the big crash in Melbourne in the race as well. So unless you are very, very quick, you're not going to get away with crashing often. That's just, you can't get away with that. I mean, Max Verstappen has had lots of crashes in his career, but he is unbelievably quick and amazing that he can obviously get away with it. Jack Doohan does not have anywhere near that same level of, favorability, let's say, with the team. Clue says, watching from Alaska. Hopefully Yuki has a solid home/first race. And let me just see if there's any other that I've missed. Todd asking, do you think we'll get a Max and Norris crash at the start? Hopefully not, because I think that would ruin the race, honestly. I know, obviously, you would love it if Max and Lando did a Senna and Prost into turn one, but yeah, I really hope the top three all get through fine, because I think we're going to have a really good fight between that top three all race long. As well, another thing I wanted to mention and ask you about in regards to Ferrari is obviously Lewis Hamilton. Can we say now that what is clear, that Lewis Hamilton is clearly past his best? Because
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, he won the sprint in Shanghai, but except for that, he's what has he really done this year that could really show us that he is close to his prime? He is clearly past his best. I mean, are you really surprised? I'm not that surprised, to be honest, that he is where he's at.
I mean, to be honest, right? You know what Lewis will do, right? He always does this when he's not in a championship battle. Right around, right around Canada is when he's going to start picking it up. That's what he always does.
True.
Um, I feel like that's about what he does near enough every year, and that's when he really starts to improve his performance. But yeah, I don't think there's no debate that he's past his absolute best. I mean, for God's sake, he's 40. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think it's an insult to say that.
Yeah, we have to clearly say what we see. I know there's a lot of people out there, obviously, in denial that he is past his best, but he clearly is. And the thing is, though, despite me saying that, or us saying that, that doesn't mean he still can't get podiums or even race wins. I mean, look at last year. He won 2 races last year, despite getting hammered by his teammate. So, yeah, the point is that I think we can clearly say now that, yeah, he is past his best. And yeah, I can already hear the people saying, oh, but it's only been 3 races. It doesn't matter. If he was back to his best, we would have seen it consistently by now. And I know exactly what prime Lewis Hamilton looks like because I was there. We were all there to see it a few years ago. And this is not anywhere near prime Lewis Hamilton. As the white Honda liveried Red Bull is, we're just seeing on the broadcast, is just sat on pole position as Ted and Jacques Villeneuve are doing the grid walk. And yeah, thankfully, we
I
could do this watch along, so we'd have to listen to Jacques.
I do just want to add something is that I think that we're quite lucky that Lewis is still in the sport at 40 years of age. I mean, I think if you asked, even during his battles with Rosberg and maybe a little bit with Bottas, I don't think any of us thought that Lewis would be still driving in Formula One at this stage of his life. Um, so I mean, it's great that he's around, but I don't think there's any argument. I don't think it's up for debate that Lewis is best, like past his prime.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, back in like 2019, 2020, we thought he'd be done by, at the latest, probably 2022 or 2023. Like, so for him to
Y-
still be
Yeah,
around, and he's going to be around obviously next year because he's got a 2-year contract. Yeah, we are lucky to have him still on the grid, and like I said, he's still capable of doing great things. The sprint race in Shanghai proved that. It's just he's not going to do it as consistently though as when he was obviously in his prime. But I will admit though, I do forget a lot of times he is 40 years old because he doesn't look anywhere close to 40 years old. He looks at
yeah.
least 10 years younger than that. As one interesting thing they're actually just showing with this grid walk is obviously Lando has the damper side of the grid for the start, and yeah, the drier part is obviously on the side that has pole position. So that right there is something we must look out for because that is going to be definitely. I mean, the second on the grid is a disadvantage a lot of the time anyway. We never really do see second on the grid get away that well. We've just been plenty of times second on the grid has got away very poorly on the first lap. I remember Lewis Hamilton here a few years ago lost about 7 or 8 positions on the first lap from second on the grid. So yeah, that is going to be tricky for Lando and an advantage for Oscar on the clean and drier side, by the looks of it, of the grid. As just looking at Oscar's car, they're just giving it a quick clean. Obviously, Oscar is not in the car at the moment, as we've got 20 minutes to go until lights out. Count Blasses. The thing is, Lewis is clearly past his best, but Lewis's best was almost a cheat code. Him powered down is still good. Exactly. I mean, I wouldn't compare it to when Michael Schumacher came back, but if you look at Michael's last couple years with Ferrari, Michael was definitely not in his prime, but was still really, really good. And I think I would say Lewis is probably at the same level Michael was in, say, 2006 or anything like that. But that type of level of past his prime, but still very, still good. There's nothing wrong with that. And like I said, Hamilton, I'm still sure, will pick up more wins in his career. He's just not going to be a championship winner again in his career. Maybe you could argue he should have stepped away after 2021. And maybe if he had done so, he would have lost anything from doing so. But credit to him, for sticking around in he's nearly, I mean, if he stays another couple years, it'll be 20 years in Formula One. So, yeah.
Yeah, with no break, like Fernando. I mean, it's unbelievable what
Or
will do.
Or Kimi as well, remember? Who had a couple years off as well.
Yes.
Let me see if I find any other comments. But Ferrari Count Blasters need to pull the finger out. Absolutely. Even if, Hamilton past his prime or not, the car is not good enough. So Ferrari need to get to work. The drivers have done, I think, fine so far. I wouldn't say they've been great, but I think they've done absolutely fine. Like you said, the team needs to pull the finger out and get this car much improved, because at the minute, if they keep this level of performance comparable to the McLaren and obviously Red Bull once they improve for the rest of the year, they're going to struggle to finish on the podium a lot of times, never mind win a race. So, yeah, big improvements are needed, no doubt about that. Let's see if I can find anything else. I don't think so. Right, so for the race, what's your top three? What are you going for?
Whoa, I really, really don't know. I'm gonna say Piastri wins from Verstappen and then Norris. I think what you mentioned about the grid on the right hand side being wetter is gonna allow Oscar to get past Max, and then I think I think Oscar should be able to get past Max in the pit stops, because I think that it might be too difficult to overtake um, the Red Bull, because the Red Bull is quite fast. Well, it's faster than the McLaren in a straight line, so I think that could potentially play out. But I can also certainly see Norris getting past Verstappen, just because they're going to have so much more grip once the tires get into their later stages.
Yeah, it's going to be, for Verstappen to win, it is going to be tough. Like I said, I still think Max will win, because I just think he's performing at such a high level that as long as he maintains the lead, Max, at the end of lap one, I think he can just about hang on for the win. But Piastri, I'm going to go second, and pretty much for the reason that you just said, and obviously notice as well that Piastri's on the better side of the grid for the start. So I think Piastri will get ahead, finish right behind Max, and then Lando will come home in third. And if that result was to happen, Max Verstappen would take the lead of the Drivers' Championship if Lando finished third and Max won the race. Which I think that would just sum up the difference between Max and Lando. Max leading the championship after the first three races despite being in a much slower car. That would just sum it up so well. Especially after Lando's comments coming into this Grand Prix that the reason they're where they are in the championship is because they're the only team with two good drivers.
He's obviously talking about the Constructors' Championship.
That comment is going to come back to bite him so bad later in the season, especially if Mercedes start pulling results together with both drivers. Like once Antonelli gets up there consistently, that's really going to come back to bite him. Yeah, we'll see how this start goes. And yeah, again, the inside of the grid, the right-hand side, where Norris is starting from in second, and then you've got Leclerc behind him in fourth, and then Antonelli sixth, Hamilton eighth. That is definitely the weaker side of the grid. So we'll see who can capitalize on that as the national anthems are done. And now we've got just under 15 minutes to go until lights out. If you guys have got predictions for the race, put them in the chat right now, and I'll get to them. Obviously, the poll is still running at the top of the chat. You've still got about 5-6 minutes remaining before I finish the results of that poll. Chloe says Norris, Max, and Piastri for the top three. Count Blast says funny how people still claim Alonso just needs a good car and he's older than Lewis. So I can't. Fernando's so old at this point. I can't even remember how old he is. But I know he's
42. I'm pretty sure.
I for some reason I thought he was like 45. Just yeah.
He's 43.
Oh right, yeah. I knew it was not too far away from 45. And Alonso is so old that, yeah, later this year in Brazil will be the 20-year anniversary of his first championship, which I'm sure there'll be some sort of celebration for that.
Well, he turns 44 this year.
Yeah, it's sometime in the summer, I think.
So, yeah, it's end of July.
As Rook saying Piastri, Norris, Verstappen. Miss Marquis says Verstappen, Norris, Piastri. And Rooks thinks that Norris will lose time battling with Max. And that's why Piastri, he thinks, will win. Ferrari gets disqualified again. The plank, as I explained in that video I did a week ago, the plank has really been an issue for them this season so far. Obviously disqualified for it with Hamilton in Shanghai, and then they had plank issues in Melbourne. So yeah, let's hope that isn't affecting them yet again. It would be absolutely disgraceful if they were to suffer more issues with that here, given they've had plenty of time to get on top of it. But let's see if I can find any other comments. Scroll up a bit. KH is Hamilton at the end of his driving career. Yeah, probably. I wouldn't be surprised if Hamilton retires at the end of next year, especially if Ferrari are not really in a championship position next year, which, from what we're hearing about next year's cars and engines, it doesn't seem as though Ferrari are going to be really that great. It's a lot of the talk is about Mercedes power. So, yeah, chances are next year will be Lewis's final year in Formula One, because Ferrari, if Hamilton is clearly lagging behind Leclerc, which I think we will see quite a few times in this partnership, Ferrari do have options to replace Hamilton with. Oliver Behrman being one. If he can do a great job with Haas, then I'm sure he'll be a future Ferrari driver. And then, of course, as me and you were discussing with the whole Max to Mercedes possibility, if Antonelli leaves Mercedes, you'd think he'd end up at Ferrari at some point before the end of the decade.
They won't get rid of Antonelli like Mercedes. No way.
Well, yeah, we'll see. I wouldn't be surprised if they got rid of him, or maybe not got rid of him, but maybe, I don't know, put him on the back burner for a year.
That's Toto's boy, man. No way he gets rid of him.
Yeah, you say that, but Russell's also his boy as well.
True. True.
He really loves him. So that's why I said to you, I said that I still think it will be Russell and Antonelli next year because even though, yeah, I know he loves Max, I think he does. I think he's very happy with the driver lineup he's got. Plus, I do think Max will want to wait to see who's got what car wise next year. Which I think, I mean, his contract's up in 2028, so yeah, we'll see what happens on that front. But it's definitely going to be either Mercedes or Aston Martin. One thing I don't think I talked about was it? I think was it the last Grand Prix? Oscar Piastri signed a new multi-year deal with McLaren, taking him probably up until the end of this decade. At McLaren, are you happy with that decision, especially McLaren being Mercedes powered going forward for the next era?
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, and
nothing more to add.
Yeah,
right decision.
One thing I was going to say as well though is there has been a lot of talk that Mercedes power is going to be really strong next year. That does not mean the Mercedes Works team are going to get back to what they were doing in 2014. Because, of course, you've got McLaren right there now. And even Williams, who've got at the minute, a pretty decent team. So there's no guarantees next year as to who is actually going to have the overall best car. But yeah, I think Piastri and Norris especially, they're in a good position there at McLaren for the next few years.
And McLaren also haven't 2013 to themselves, the year before the regulations changed.
Yeah, which was, looking back, just so stupid what they did. As Todd's saying, Piastri going to go for it quick. McLaren's could take each other out. Will be interesting. So watch. Russell just chilling to benefit from it. I'd be surprised if McLaren, the drivers, crash into each other. They normally, when they race each other, it's very clean. It's I don't think, I can't remember really any time they've been close to having an accident with each other, to be honest. But let me finish up this poll in the chat. So 335 votes. Cheers for voting, guys, on the poll, asking you who will win the Japanese Grand Prix today. And 48% of you have gone for Max Verstappen, 28% for Norris, 17% for Piastri, and 5% for George Russell. We will see. It's definitely not a sure thing, and that's the great thing about this race compared to this time last year, where we all knew who was going to win and what the podium was pretty much likely to be. That is the great thing about 2025. But let me get into a final couple bits of information that you guys need to know before we get into this Grand Prix. Firstly, starting with your championship standings. Lando Norris coming into this race only 8 points clear of Max Verstappen. George Russell third. Oscar Piastri in fourth. Piastri only 10 points behind his teammate. Antonelli then in fifth. Albon sixth. Ocon up in seventh with Stroll eighth. Hamilton ninth and Leclerc 10th. Obviously, the double disqualification really hurting Ferrari. And on the constructor side, McLaren in the lead, 21 points clear of Mercedes, who are then another 21 points clear of Red Bull. Williams in fourth, level on points with Ferrari in fifth. Haas in sixth, Aston Martin in seventh. Sauber eighth, Racing Bulls ninth, and Alpine still pointless in P10. That might change today, though. In regards to the teams, McLaren, their last win in Japan was in 2011 with Jenson Button, and McLaren have only won twice here in Japan since the year 2000. It has not been a very successful Grand Prix for them in the 21st century. And last year, 5th and 8th they were in the race. Obviously, that's going to be a lot better today. For Red Bull, obviously won last year's Japanese Grand Prix and have won the last 3 here at Suzuka. And obviously last year, 1st and 2nd they were here. This was probably the most dominant race for them of all of last year. And obviously this time in 2025, it is quite a different story with their car. As Ferrari, their last win in Japan, 21 years since their last win at Suzuka with Michael Schumacher. And Ferrari, 5 wins they've had in Japan since the year 2000, but those wins were all at the very start of the century. So yeah, a long time it's been without victory in Japan, and it's pretty likely that drought is going to continue. Ferrari, though, were pretty good in the race here last year, 3rd and 4th. They would be very happy with a result like that today. And for Mercedes, their last win in Japan was in 2019 with Valtteri Bottas 6 years ago. They've won in Japan 5 times since 2015. Last year was a disastrous 7th and 9th. They surely will get a better result than that today. But let's now go on to your starting grid for this Japanese Grand Prix. On the front row, the championship rivals of last year, Max Verstappen and Lando Norris. On the second row, birthday boy Oscar Piastri and Charles Leclerc. On the third row, all Mercedes third row, George Russell and Kimi Antonelli. On the fourth row, in his first ever Japanese Grand Prix in P7, Isaac Hadjar ahead of Lewis Hamilton, who has won this race multiple times. And completing the top 10, Alex Albon and Oliver Bearman. Just outside of the top 10, Pierre Gasly and Fernando Alonso, who has won this race before. And then you've got Liam Lawson and Yuki Tsunoda, 2 drivers who were actually teammates at this track a year and a half ago. 15th and 16th, Carlos Sainz and Nico Hülkenberg, the 2 ex-teammates at Renault. Penultimate row of the grid, Bortoleto and Ocon. And on the final row, Jack Doohan and Lance Stroll. So, yeah, 53-lap race it will be. And once I find out who is on what compound, obviously I'll put that up on screen. I did try to do a new tyre graphic to make it color corrected, but I wasn't able to have any luck, sadly. So it'll be the same as it was last time. But most drivers should be on the medium compound tyre, as plenty of drivers being supported in the grandstands. Oscar Piastri, yep, 24 years old today. You'd think he was 34 years old with his demeanour, but yeah, he is looking to win on his birthday. Can't remember the last time a driver won on their birthday. It has happened before, I just can't remember when it was.
Was it Jean Alesi that was speaking about it on Friday?
Was it? I didn't know that. Oh, in yeah, his only win. I didn't know it was his birthday as well.
Yeah.
As the tyre blankets.
Yeah, James Hunt and Jean Alesi.
Oh, right. So only twice, and well, quite long ago. Alesi's only win was 30 years ago. As the top 3 I just saw there are on the medium compound tyre. As I will get this tyre information correct. As the formation lap begins now, and Max pulls away at the front of the pack. So everyone on mediums except for Doohan and Stroll on softs, and Hamilton, Bortoleto and Ocon are on the hard compound tyres. So interesting that Lewis Hamilton going for the hard tyres, splitting the strategy there at Ferrari. I guess there's nothing really to lose from doing that. So yeah, during this formation lap, I'll just get that info correct. It should be a one-stop race. But we will see if anyone goes for the two-stopper. Lewis Hamilton definitely is going to be on a one-stop strategy now. There's no doubt about that. As they're just coming through the S's. And already exiting the hairpin. And they'll be approaching the front of the pack spoon curve in a moment. And yeah, 53 laps this race will be. Pretty quick. Japanese Grand Prix usually is. Pretty fast and furious. Right, so yeah. As Rooks said in the chat, everyone starting on the medium except for Lewis Hamilton in 8th on the hard. You got Bortoletto on the hard, Ocon on the hard, Doohan and Stroll on the soft compound tyre. Really interested to see Hamilton and what he can do on the hard tyre. That might really benefit Ferrari's race if that tyre really works straight away. As Verstappen now pulling out of the final corner and doing his final burnouts as they pull onto the starting grid. And Verstappen, thankfully, has plenty of experience for his team of leading from pole here. As we're now looking at the visor cam of Yuki Tsunoda, starting in 14th. Hopefully can have a good home race and give something for the home crowd to cheer about. That's the front 5-6 cars just lining up on the grid now. And all the mechanics ready and waiting. As Max has got his car on pole pointed towards Lando, and Lando's got his car pointed towards Max. And I think for Lando, though, I think the reason he's doing that is because he knows he's on the damper side of the track and he wants to get over as quickly as possible. And Max is coming over purely to cover off an attack from Lando Norris as the cars are lined up. And now the green flag waves at the back and the lights are on. It's 3, 4, 5 lights. And it's go at Suzuka, and Max Verstappen gets a good start. Norris does actually as well. And Norris is going to think about a move around the outside, but does not bother going for it. But it is Verstappen, Norris, Piastri, Leclerc, and then the two Mercedes, pretty much as it is, or was on the grid, for pretty much the top 10. As they're coming through the Suzuka S's now. And yeah, the top 10, the same. The only change I can see, the highest place change, is Alonso is ahead of Gasly for 11th. As they come in now to the Degners, out of the Degners. And Max Verstappen comfortably leading by a few tenths of a second over Lando Norris. And Oscar Piastri, who's right there with Lando. As some action going on at the hairpin. And a brilliant... I thought that was going to be a brilliant move there by, I think, one of the... Is it the Haas? No. As Alex Albon here, almost having a go at Lewis Hamilton, who I think is struggling. The tyre warm-up as Alonso and Gasly side by side on the exit of Spoon. And Alonso keeps himself just ahead. The Alpine, though, in qualifying was 3 kilometers an hour quicker down the straights, but he can't quite use it as Alonso squeezes him out into 130R, but Gasly will have another go as Yuki Tsunoda has had a decent start. He's up to 13th place. As we are on lap 2 and Max Verstappen clearly leads this Grand Prix. It's Verstappen from Norris, Piastri, Leclerc, Russell, Antonelli, Hadjar, Hamilton, Albon, Behrman, Alonso, Gasly, Tsunoda, Lawson, and then Hulkenberg 15th, Sainz in 16th, Ocon 17th, Doohan 18th, Stroll 19th, and Bortoletto has dropped to the back. So a poor start for him, but all good so far. As Max Verstappen already 1 second clear of Lando Norris on lap 2 of 53. And just seeing Carlos Sainz, so presumably at the hairpin, has just overtaken Nico Hulkenberg. As Verstappen needs to get that gap over a second if he can to help his race. To get himself obviously out of DRS range. But I think Lando, yeah, he's going to have the DRS just about, as Russell looking very racy behind Leclerc, who will not have DRS assistance, as Antonelli cuts the chicane, I think. And we are now on
he definitely did.
lap 3, as Max has a 1:33.9, but now McLaren DRS enabled. They are now coming after Verstappen. Are you surprised how well especially Lando got off the grid pretty well, didn't he, from second?
Yeah, it seemed like nobody really had any issues getting off the grid. Everyone pretty much got the exact same launch.
So here's a replay of Antonelli, and yeah, it's just locked up. And thankfully, very clean and clear runoff, so he could just accelerate back on, as Max has pulled the gap back up to a second. And Verstappen saying my upshifts are again really, really bad. He's been complaining about that for about 2 or 3 years now.
That's an age as long as time, that is. Verstappen complaining about his upshifts or his downshifts.
Probably a good sign at this point when he complains about
yes,
it.
Definitely.
As coming through 130i, he's a second clear of Lando, which is just, he got out of DRS range, and he will keep out DRS range, as Russell really looking like he wants to get into a fight behind Leclerc there, was very deep on the brakes, and has got the DRS, as Leclerc is starting to be dropped very slightly by the McLarens on lap 4 of 53. And Russell has to get past Leclerc as quickly as possible. He's clearly quicker. We can obviously see that through the corners. It's a massive difference, really. Here's a replay there at the start. I'll let you take us through it, Nib, once they get to it.
Yep. And as I called just a little while ago, everyone, honestly, had very good starts. Verstappen able to cover off Norris immediately and able to maintain position. And of course, in the first sector here, very easy to have a crash, but everyone navigated their way through it very, very smoothly. As I think you said, it looked like only Alonso was able to get something done. As now we're looking, it's from Antonelli's point of view, I assume. Where he's got Hadjar, yes, it was Antonelli, right behind him, but of course he was able to stick it in P6. It was kind of a bit of a pointless camera shot, quite frankly. I suppose there's not a lot happening. As now we're on board with Bortoletto, and he was immediately pretty much overtaken by the Haas and by Mr. Doohan. Just not able to get a good launch on the hard compound tyre.
Yeah, clearly he just had way too cold tyres. He had no confidence in the car. As there's a replay of Gasly and Alonso. They got so close on the run to 130R, with the left front of Gasly and the right rear of Alonso. But they got through just okay, as I think that's a replay of how Tsunoda got past Lawson. As on the live feed, Oscar Piastri a lot closer to Norris than Norris is to Verstappen. Verstappen clearly over a second ahead, so Norris is not getting any DRS advantage. And yeah, Piastri is keeping Lando right within sight. As yeah, Max Verstappen, 1.5 seconds clear of Lando Norris, with Piastri 8 tenths behind, and then Leclerc but 1.3 behind Piastri, with Russell within a second of him. As Max is told the gear shifts should improve in the next couple of laps. Lewis Hamilton, by the way, in 8th, held up behind Hadjar, and that's really hurting his race. And we're actually seeing him now through 130R. Hadjar doesn't have DRS from anyone ahead, so really Hamilton should be getting this move done. As he gets close through the chicane, can he get a good enough exit? He does. And DRS open. Surely Hamilton has got to get this move done here. And Hadjar doesn't even defend, and Lewis Hamilton takes the position now. He's got to get himself after Antonelli ahead, who's just under a couple seconds up the road. So Hamilton up to P7. And we're looking just behind it to Albon and Behrman, who are close with Hadjar. I thought that would be a close fight for those final 3 points positions, and that's exactly what it is right now. As Max now 1.8 seconds clear. Where is McLaren's pace? They're not showing it at the moment. Or maybe they don't have it compared to Max in that Red Bull. But, yeah, McLaren in general, just don't look as quick as I was expecting. Leclerc is hanging on decently well to the 2 McLarens. And obviously Leclerc's got Russell right behind him. So McLaren look more right now under threat from the Ferrari and Mercedes behind them. Really what they're hoping to do against Verstappen up front. As we're on lap 7, and yeah, Max 1.7 clear of Norris. Piastri about 6 tenths of a second behind Norris through turn 1 and 2. And I wonder what McLaren will do if Piastri continues to be held up behind Lando. As Leclerc just over a second behind you. So yeah, if Norris keeps up dropping time to Max, and that causes a bit of a train, I think he's going to have to let Oscar go, because Leclerc is keeping up really because of Lando's lack of pace.
I think we both know the response if Lando gets questioned.
Yeah.
He needs to get closer, will be the response.
As Max saying the shifts are now a bit better. And clearly they are, because he's now a couple seconds clear of Lando Norris. And having a comfortable drive so far. Way more comfortable than I think he and Red Bull would have thought at this point. As Piastri. He's not going to be able to overtake Lando, because I don't think Piastri is that much quicker than Lando to overtake, but Lando continues to drop time to Max. That's, yeah, the gap now 2 seconds. Max, fastest lap as well, 133.5. That's another battle. You've got is Hadjar and Albon fighting over 8th. Albon within a second. Obviously, Russell still within a second of Leclerc. And Piastri within a second of his teammate, Lando Norris. As the car's coming through the Degnes. But these, especially the front-running teams on the mediums, should be going another 10 to 12 laps on this tyre before they come in for a pit stop. Meanwhile, Lewis Hamilton, I think, will probably be going another 20 laps at least on his compound. As Piastri trying his best to keep up in the dirty air behind Lando. Lando has been slower again on this lap compared to Max, but not by much. As Piastri probably hurting his tyres a bit now, struggling a bit to keep up in the dirty air as we are on lap 9. Here is, Alex Albon. Is this Alex Albon? No, this is Carlos Sainz. 15th. Who would have thought Sainz would be regularly bullied by Albon in that Williams, but that's what's happening so far this year. And Albon in 9th place, and Sainz in 15th. And Carlos was the final podium sitter last year for Ferrari. Now he's fighting a Racing Bulls for 14th place. As Lando being told there is possible rain, lap 20, class 1 lap, doesn't change our plan.
It's just light drizzle.
Yeah.
So I don't even know why they let the drivers know about that.
Yeah, it's not going to make a real difference, As, Piastri has dropped now over a second behind Lando, again, probably because the dirty air just hurting the tyres. Leclerc is starting to drop a bit further behind the McLarens now, so that Ferrari is starting to suffer. Russell is still right behind Leclerc, so, that Ferrari, this is really the part of the stint where they suffer, is obviously the second half of the stint. As we're now on board with Russell, still under a second behind Leclerc. Antonelli doing a decent job. He's only just over a second and a half behind his teammate. And Russell has got to get this move done, whether it's in the pit stop phase or whatever, because Leclerc is holding him up a lot. As Norris does a 1:33.5, as here comes a pit stop for Lance Stroll. Started on the soft tyres and pits to a set of hards. That's not a surprise, him pitting on that lap. That's about as long as you really want to go on that compound. So you've now got Stroll on the hard tyre.
I think Piastri made a mistake in the first sector of this lap. Lost that half a second.
Yeah, he has now 1.6 behind his teammate. And not too far ahead of Leclerc. Over a second ahead of Leclerc, but not too far up the road now. As Albon's saying, these shifts are so bad. What have we done to them? It's been shit at the start. It's being shit now. And they ask, what can you be a bit more specific? And he says, the same I've been talking about all the time. And they say, okay. So Max is not the only one complaining about that issue. But this Russell and Leclerc fight is really the only fight out there. You've got Tsunoda only half a second behind his good friend Pierre Gasly. But I wonder what Mercedes are going to do with Russell, whether they'll go for a bit of an earlier pit stop than planned to get him ahead of Leclerc. Because Russell, I think, would probably be able to get in there to a degree with Piastri if Leclerc wasn't holding him up. And at least keep Piastri not too far away. As now coming through. Spoon. Leclerc actually a bit further ahead than Russell at this part of the lap than he was a lap ago. Piastri is, I think, slightly closing back in on Lando. Lando did do a fastest lap, but Max is now responding by increasing the gap up to about 2.1 seconds, now 2.2. As we're on lap 12 of 53, and I think Max might have just done the fastest lap. Oh no, Oscar Piastri has done the fastest lap.
Yeah, by a slim margin over Max.
As here on board, Russell still stuck behind Leclerc. And it's the front tyres that obviously get such a pounding, even if it's clear air around this track, but Russell's front tyres are really going to be hurting. Stuck behind that car as Albon has dropped a bit further behind Hadjar now, 1.5 seconds behind. We do see, though, we saw it show.
McLaren turning up the pace here, Chaz.
Yep, Norris got a gap under 2 seconds now. As I was going to say with Albon and Williams, they do tend to run a bit longer than teams like Racing Bull. So I am expecting Albon to run a bit longer into this race to try and get ahead of Hadjar that way. And he's keeping Hadjar nicely within range, not too far ahead. And driving nicely is Albon. And yeah, McLaren are progressively getting stronger by the looks of it. And even though Max has been quicker so far in this race, McLaren are still close enough in terms of the undercut to pull that off if possible. So it's not comfortable for Max, but he's got it. He's got the gap where he needs it, at least for the moment. But he probably, if he has any more pace, Max, he needs to try and find it.
Piastri 3/10 quicker on the last lap and Lando 2/10.
As Leclerc now has dropped over 2 seconds behind Piastri, as Lando being told, tyre update, no sign of graining on any compound. This is a rear thermal limiting race. As here is on board Yuki Tsunoda, stuck behind Pierre Gasly. As the top 5 currently separated by about 6 seconds, which is pretty good after 13 laps for them to be separated, the top 5 by 6 seconds. That's pretty much ideal, keeping it close, especially once we get to the pit stops. As I am surprised a bit that Lewis Hamilton hasn't closed in within a second of Antonelli. Still, 2.5 behind Antonelli, who is 2.5 seconds behind his teammate Russell. Russell, at a bit of a poor lap, has dropped over a second behind Leclerc on lap 14 of 53.
It's 3 fastest laps in a row for Piastri.
Yeah, he's now just 1.2 seconds behind his teammate. So the top 3 separated by 3 seconds. And yeah, 1:33.2 for Oscar Piastri. It's very, very tantalizing, I would say, this race at the moment. And these pit stops coming up are going to be very, very important in deciding who wins this race and gets on the podium, because it is that close out there. As Max pulling away slightly from Lando on this lap. Piastri still closing on his teammate, though. And gradually pulling himself back into that fight for at least second place. Now he's got a bit of a slipstream. as he just needs a couple more, or another quarter of a second or so to get that DRS back. As we're on lap 15, and it is Verstappen leading by 2 seconds from Norris second, Piastri third, Leclerc fourth, Russell fifth, Antonelli sixth, Hamilton seventh, Hadjar eighth, Albon ninth, and Oliver Behrman in 10th. Lance Stroll, by the way, who was pitted for the hards, has not done anything on the hards. He's over a pit stop behind Bortoletto, so the hard tyres are not working, really.
Yeah, slowest man on track, actually.
And I mean, Lewis Hamilton is not really doing anything on that tyre. Ocon, clearly in a quicker car than the Sauber ahead, but he can't get within a second of Hulkenberg, so that's, I guess, good for this race that the hard tyre is not quite performing that well.
Things starting to stabilise at the front. Max been able to find 2/10 in the first sector on the last 2 laps now. And so same first sector time for the top 3.
Yeah, Piastri, sorry, Piastri closing in into this final chicane, but the gap just over a second, but he is very close to getting that DRS back. As we're on lap 16 now. Russell, by the way, has dropped a second and a half now behind Leclerc. And yeah, I think they're probably waiting for the pit stop window to open to probably undercut past Leclerc. As here is Tsunoda, still stuck behind Pierre Gasly. As Doohan pits. Good stint on the soft tyre to get to lap 16. Even though he didn't really go anywhere. Still a good stint nonetheless. Now onto the hard tyre. We'll see what he can do. He should come out in 19th position. So no more soft tyre runners. We've got 5 drivers on the hard tyre. 2 of them have pitted. 3 of them have not. And yeah, all I can say is we're just waiting for the pit stop phase to come because nothing is happening right now.
Yep. Yep, I'm just here watching the live timing more than the actual race.
The lap times are pretty close between the top 3, and it's looking. We definitely have got a race on our hands, but it's just waiting for that first pit stop, and I reckon after that we'll start to get them pushing a lot harder. As is replay of Sainz locking the inside front, going over the escape road, as he's really struggling in 15th.
Yeah. And it's just a waiting game for the midfield to pit for then the front runners to have a gap to pit into.
Yeah, you need about 21, 22 seconds, I think it is, to make a pit stop here.
Yeah.
As we're still watching this Tsunoda Gasly battle. And yeah, Max, for example, in the lead is not far enough clear of Hadjar in 8th. He's Hadjar still comfortably within Max's pit window. I think if Max was to pit now, he'd probably come out behind Tsunoda, wouldn't he?
He'd come out ahead of Alonso. It'd be around Alonso.
Right. And there is 2.8 seconds gap between Behrman and Alonso. But yeah, probably another 4 or 5 laps possibly until we see the top 3 in the pits, as Piastri's dropped a bit further behind Norris. Now Norris, though, closing in on Max. Gap now 1.8 seconds, now 1.7 on lap 18. We do see that in the second half of a stint, that McLaren, especially with its tyres, does come alive. And it looks like it is now for Lando Norris. As Lando being told, our main time loss to Verstappen is the hairpin, but you and Oscar are similar. And yeah, Lando at least needs to keep the gap as it is, which is what, 1.6, 1.7 seconds, so he can have the opportunity for an undercut. And no way can Lando just, drive safely and comfortably home for second. Lando has got to win this race. Because whilst McLaren at the minute have got a better car, he has to make hay whilst the sun shines. And he's not quite doing that at the minute. But he is closer. Well, is he closer? I don't think so, really, on this lap. As they tell Lando to stay out. On lap 19. Only a few more.
Just dummied Red Bull.
Only a few more laps and we'll be at the half race distance, as Sainz has been noted for leaving the track and gaining an advantage. I don't see how he did really gain an advantage, but there you go. As Piastri now 2.5 seconds behind Norris, so Oscar's fallen off a cliff pace-wise.
He's just not able to hang in the first sector anymore. Norris taken significant time out of him last previous laps.
As Norris continuing...
As Norris is to Verstappen, frankly.
Yeah, he's really closing in now. As, he's got the gap, or did briefly have it under 1.5 seconds. As Tsunoda still here behind Gasly. The pit window, though, now is open for the medium tyre runners. So this is really where the race is going to be mostly decided. And let's see who gets it right on the strategy. As Lando being told pace is really strong, keep it up, as both Max and Lando stay out. On lap 20 of 53. As Russell pits, no surprise. I think his tyres had gone from following Leclerc for so long. And that will now trigger, I think, Ferrari, at least with Leclerc, to make a pit stop. As Russell, good stop, 2.3 seconds. Russell needs to come out ahead of Gasly and Tsunoda, but he doesn't. And that might hurt him if he catches Tsunoda quickly. As Max asking, you want me to push or not? And I didn't see the response, but I'm guessing they want him to push because Lando continuing to close in.
Yep, and he certainly responded matched the Lando in the first sector.
So let me just update. So Russell is in 13th at the moment. And Ferrari, surely with Leclerc, are about to respond. As just waiting really to see what will McLaren do, and they decide to pit Oscar Piastri first, which actually I think is a good thing because Piastri I don't think will jump Norris if Norris pits the next lap. So Piastri into the pits.
Max really responded there. He's actually faster on the previous lap.
And Piastri hard tyres go on, and he will come out just ahead of Alonso. Behrman not too far ahead, so it won't be the cleanest of outlaps. But Piastri in 9th. And yeah, surely now, I mean, that's clear for me that Max now should pit at the end of this lap, because you would think Lando is now going to pit at the end of this lap, but maybe that's what McLaren are wanting Red Bull to do. We'll have to see. But
well, they've kind of snookered themselves here because you'd imagine if Verstappen's got to respond here, he's got to pit to cover off Norris. Then Norris probably stay out, and then there's a threat of Piastri getting ahead of Norris potentially, depending how fast he is.
yeah, I think the call really was to have Norris pit, wasn't it, for that undercut?
Yeah.
But I think they bottled it a bit there as Leclerc boxing, Norris boxing, and Verstappen on lap 22. It's a pit stop race. And Red Bull and McLaren, two of the best pit crews in the business. And McLaren, good stop. And it's close between Verstappen and Norris. Why are we not seeing that? Why are we watching the Ferrari pits? And Max and Lando getting closer, and Lando bumping onto the grass. I don't know if Max pushed Lando off, but I know they were side by side. Cheers for the brilliant TV race direction, FOM. 10 out of 10 on that end. But Lando saying he forced me off, but, well, we'll have to see. But they were side by side. And yeah, out of nowhere, we've had a bit of controversy. But now it's Antonelli in the lead, Hamilton second, Hadjar third, Albon fourth. And here's a replay of what happened. I'll let you take us through it, Nib. So Norris, made his pit stop, and then what happened?
Well, yeah, I still can't believe the only action that there has been the whole entire race, we've freaking missed it because they were too busy showing one of those stupid pit stop shots. I mean, yeah, wow, great pit stop by McLaren. Was he forced off? He's just chosen to drive on the grass, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I mean these cars are too wide to go side by side on the exit of the pits like that. So, yeah, there's no way are they surely going to give him a penalty for that. As we're on lap 23. So yeah, Antonelli staying out interestingly on the medium, going for a longer strategy there. So Verstappen in 5th, but still has the net lead. Norris 6th, Piastri 7th. Behrman 8th, Alonso 9th. As Lando saying, he saw me alongside, I was easily alongside. He was, but the two cars couldn't fit on the exit of the pit lane, and he drove onto the grass. That's what happened, but he's trying to...
Max was certainly giving him the squeeze, but I don't think. Well, how they classify it is the front axle being alongside him. I'm not too sure if they were.
Yeah, I just don't think that's a penalty whatsoever. As Max saying he pressed the pit limiter off too early. There's no way that was legal. So all kicking off. But hopefully this race doesn't get decided by penalties. And yeah, Red Bull, the reason they ended up side by side is because Red Bull had a slightly slower stop of 3.3 seconds. And yeah, looking at that, you see that camera angle from behind. It looks... Yeah. Lando
Max,
had nowhere
Max held
to
his line.
Yeah, Max held his line, and Lando was always going to go for the grass if he was intending to be alongside. So no way is that a penalty.
Yeah, completely agree.
As on lap 24, Antonelli stays out, and he is comfortably leading by 3.5 seconds. Obviously hasn't pitted yet. As Behrman and Tsunoda are pitted. By the way, I know the tyre information is mostly incorrect. I will correct it once the pit stop phase is calmed down. As Tsunoda will come out in 17th. And Behrman in 16th place. As Max Verstappen has passed Alex Albon for 4th. Leclerc is up to 8th. Russell is in 10th. As we're now looking at Russell right behind Alonso. And yeah, he'll get this move done in a second. But yeah, watch out for Antonelli just to see what he's doing and how he's doing, because yeah, Mercedes going for the long game with him. By the way, Leclerc kept ahead of Russell, so the undercut's not worked, and Russell now stuck behind Alonso as ducking and diving to try and get past Alonso into the chicane, but Alonso not having it. Alonso then deciding to pit. And Alex Albon is also pitted. Surprised Albon didn't go longer than Hadjar, but maybe can get an undercut here as Antonelli's still out there up front, as Alonso should come out in 16th place. As Pierre Gasly has pitted as well, and Tsunoda has jumped. Gasly in the pit stop phase. So Tsunoda past Gasly. As the pit exit incident between Max and Lando has been noted. But I think that's all you'll get on that. As Gasly's actually dropped to 18th now, so not great pit stop really there for the team. But Alex Albon is now 13th, so he's come out ahead of Behrman, who I guess he needed to cover off. As we're now on lap 26, Antonelli's still in the lead. Still out there on his medium tyres. As Isaac Hadjar, great race he's having, great weekend, and he pits for a set of hard tyres to try and cover off Alexander Albon. As Lando Norris does the fastest lap. Lando 2.2 seconds behind Verstappen. As Hadjar is going to come out behind Lawson and Sainz, who have not pitted yet, but comes out just ahead of Ocon, who also hasn't pitted. So he's got a few cars in between.
No further investigation.
Good. Thank goodness for that. Yeah, he's got a few cars, Hadjar, between himself and Albon, but he's struggling a bit here with cold tyres. But Hadjar should be okay. So, 10th it is at the moment. Isaac Hadjar. But, yeah, Antonelli and Hamilton still have not pitted. As we are now midway, pretty much through this race. And here's a replay of Sainz going across the chicane again. And yeah, really struggling is Sainz. As we're now on lap 27. Antonelli, by the way, if you're wondering how far he is ahead of certain drivers, he's only 8 seconds or so ahead of Verstappen, who of course has pitted. And then he's about 10 seconds ahead of Lando, about 11.5 ahead of Piastri, and then about 16, 17 seconds ahead of Leclerc. If Antonelli was to pit now, he would come out behind his teammate, but would have quite a bit fresher tyres. So may have to watch out for Antonelli. And Lando being told that, they said no further action, which is, again, the right decision. Also, we have to watch out for Lewis Hamilton once he gets onto the medium compound tyres, which are performing well out there. Yeah, once Hamilton gets onto that compound, it's going to be quite interesting. But everyone is on the hard compound tyre now, except for Antonelli in the lead, who hasn't pitted. And also Lawson and Sainz, who have not pitted either. That's all Antonelli going a bit deep there in the second half of the chicane, but he stays out. And
so I temporarily unmuted the Sky Sports commentary, and Villeneuve was saying that they should have kept Norris out and not pitted him.
I mean, once they made the decision to pit Piastri, maybe, yeah, but they should have undercut with Norris when they decided to pit Piastri. That was the time to do it, and they bottled it.
Yeah.
That's now Max, still 2.2 clear of Norris. That is Alex Albon passing Gabriel Bortoleto for 12th place. Albon should still finish in the points, because we've still got Lawson and Sainz and Ocon to pit. So yeah, Albon is still in a net 9th place in this Grand Prix. But what I'm most interested to see now is Antonelli and Hamilton, what they do after they pit. Because obviously they're going quite a bit longer here. This is a replay of Tsunoda jumping the chicane, trying to follow Fernando Alonso. Tsunoda currently running in 16th, which would be a net, 12th place, I think. He's doing his best. It's a hard car to drive. So, yeah. And there's a side replay from a camera from the side. And yeah, Lando was not squeezed at all. Anyone who thinks that is an absolute clown. That's on lap 29. Antonelli still out there, 4 seconds clear of Lewis Hamilton. Max Verstappen only 2.5 seconds behind Hamilton. As I got to say, and I think Verstappen is, as this is Albon passing Ocon into turn 1. I think it is quite a bit down to Max just looking after his tyres, but Max not gaining as much on Antonelli and Hamilton as I would have expected, which is interesting.
No, these tyres are holding on very well. Not Norris. Antonelli and Hamilton setting personal best sector times. Actually, Hamilton was matching Verstappen, actually quicker than Norris in the first sector.
Yeah, that's really helping. The decision by Ferrari to start the hard tyre, and Antonelli getting the most he can out of these medium compound tyres. As we're looking at, this is Hadjar and Sainz fighting over 9th place. On now lap 30.53, only 23 laps to go. Sainz having to defend a bit, going through the exit of 130R. But will Sainz pit? Nope. Hadjar should get him down the pit straight though. And here he comes, Isaac Hadjar. And moves nicely to the outside, wiggling about. And yep, he gets the move done. Hadjar up to 9th. And having a good race. Looking a lot better than it was a couple of weeks ago in Shanghai, where the strategy really caused the team to fall apart. This is Sainz through 130, I think, ran Did he run wide? Oh no, he just lazily touched the curb. And then, yeah, brilliant move from Hadjar, who's nearly back to where he was before the pit stops. All he's got now is his teammate. As here is Hamilton, who's locked up, going into the chicane. Max was about to overtake him, but Lewis decides to pit. Interesting that he couldn't get those tyres to go as long as the mediums. But, yeah, decides to come in on lap now 31. And he should come out in 7th place between Russell and Lawson. And let's see what he can do. So, Hamilton in 7th. On a set of medium tyres. And yeah, Antonelli is 4.5 seconds ahead of Max. Obviously, Antonelli hasn't pitted yet. And yeah, Antonelli is, when he pits, if he was to pit at the end of this lap, he'd only be about 5 seconds or so behind his teammate, which is not too bad considering he'll have much fresher tyres. We're talking at least 10 laps fresher. So watch out for Antonelli. He might be able even to get after Leclerc. As
spot on.
Hamilton just locking up in response to Max trying to overtake him. And then that's Carlos Sainz letting Alex Albon through, which must be humiliating. As here he comes, Kimi Antonelli. The 18-year-old pits after leading the Japanese Grand Prix, a Grand Prix I'm sure he'll lead for real at some point in the future. As Max Verstappen does a 1:31.7. New fastest lap, but Lando is only 1.4 seconds behind, so it is very close up there, and this race is not over by any means, as Antonelli comes out in 6th place on the hard compound tyre.
Yeah, Lando was only 26 thousandths slower than Verstappen on that lap.
And who else is... Bortoletto has just pitted. He was decently high up the order. But yeah, now we've only got 3 medium tyre runners out there. Lawson and Sainz have not pitted. Hamilton has. As Hadjar now 8th. And it's this is Albon, only half a second behind Lawson. And I'll just quickly correct who's on what compound. As actually, I might as well just put Lawson on the hard now because Albon is about to overtake him. As we are now lap 33. And yeah, Lando just 1.2 seconds behind. It's so close as Albon up the inside of Lawson at the chicane, and Albon now in 9th place. As Esteban Ocon now pits. And Ocon should come out in, I think it would probably be like 18th place or something like that. Bortoletto. Yeah, he made his stop. He's in 19th. Lance Stroll has negative pace. I can't even describe how awful he's been. Not just today, but this weekend. As Ocon, yeah, comes out in 18th on the hard compound tyre.
Here we go.
As this is Lewis Hamilton within a second of Kimi Antonelli. Hamilton on the mediums, which of course are working very well, which we just saw with Antonelli. As Max still a second and a half clear of Norris, but Piastri is now entering the fight. Fastest lap for the Australian.
That was half a second on Norris.
Yeah, he's put himself right back in there now, as Antonelli now does the fastest lap on 1:31.4. Is a replay of Russell going deep at the chicane, who is very much under threat from his teammate behind if Antonelli can get on with it. As Lawson and Sainz both pit, finally. And Lawson will keep ahead of Sainz. So Sainz will come out in 17th, it should be. And they've put Carlos Sainz onto a set of soft tyres. That's quite ambitious, but I guess they need to try something. And Lawson also on the soft compound tyre. As Piastri now just 1.2 behind Lando, as Lando dropping slightly behind, further behind Max as they begin lap 35. And Oscar losing a bit of time in the chicane there, unfortunately.
Doohan did 15 laps on the softs earlier, didn't he? So could be doable for Sainz and Lawson.
Yeah, it could be. Especially now the track has a lot more rubber on it. Obviously, the rubber washed away after the rain overnight and in the morning as well. As here is a replay of, I think is that Albon and Behrman? I think it is, but a dive bomb nonetheless. No, it's Behrman and Sainz. This is when Sainz was. This is before Sainz pitted, and Behrman went for the dive bomb, and Sainz pretty much just slammed the door. Thankfully, no contact because that would have ruined Behrman's race. But Behrman having a great weekend still. He is in 10th place, and he's comfortably in 10th place, under no threat. As Piastri still closing in on Lando's. Piastri the quickest of the top three. As they begin lap 36. As after being or looking very quick, Lewis Hamilton has now dropped 2 seconds behind Antonelli. So now suddenly struggling with some sort of issue, as Antonelli is 7.5 seconds behind his teammate. As Max being told that they are happy for him to push from here on out. Which is exactly what you want to hear if you're a Max Verstappen fan, because there's no better driver out there at pushing. As we're looking at Antonelli still pulling away from Hamilton behind. As, that is Carlos Sainz passing Lawson. Finally, he's been stuck behind him the whole race almost. And he's finally done it for 16th place. They better hope those tyres don't go off, because he won't get any higher than 16th at this rate. As lap 37, Verstappen 1.3 in Lando. And Piastri 1.2 behind Lando. So the top three covered by about 2.5 seconds. It is still very close. The only way McLaren are going to win this is if they need to get into the DRS behind Verstappen for a few laps to try and at least get themselves a lot closer. And that's really, if they had that, then I think Max would come under pressure a lot. As these three pushing for all it's worth. As Lewis saying on the radio, I'd really like some info on where I'm slow, mate. And they say turn 8, 9, 13, and 14. And he asks, okay, but how much? Let me know. And then I couldn't see what it said there, but clearly having communication issues, to say the least, with his engineers so far. Not quite as hilarious as what happened in Melbourne, where Leclerc was told heavy rain was coming, and then Hamilton's engineer was like, we'll see. Even though they were both looking at the exact same fucking forecast. As Carlos Sainz now does the fastest lap, a 1:31.1, obviously on the soft compound tyre.
He's deep in the chicane.
And yeah,
Piastri agonizingly close to getting DRS.
Yeah. That I think you've probably noticed that in the final chicane he just keeps dropping a tenth or so.
Yeah, I think he goes a little bit deeper than the others, and it just sacrifices his exit a bit.
Yeah, he's so close to being able to get that DRS. But on the exit of the hairpin, he's 1.1 seconds behind, but closing now in the slipstream. It's literally Piastri getting DRS. It's hundredths of a second he needs in certain parts of the lap just to make sure he gets it. As we're now looking at Alonso in 11th place.
He's been through spoon curve.
Yeah. As Fernando, what was I going to say? Yeah, looking to finish this race. He has not finished a Grand Prix so far. The only driver not to have finished any of the races. And that's why Alonso is last in the championship coming into this race. But he will go up a couple positions, but still will be pointless. As Norris now in that range of being only hundredths here or there away from getting DRS. As Alonso coming under threat from Tsunoda slightly, is very slowly gaining on him. As Ferrari telling Leclerc, we suggest engine braking +1, and he says, yes, you've already told me, don't do it for I don't do it for a reason. As Piastri, again, just barely over a second behind Lando. As this is Hulkenberg and Doohan. Doohan's had a decent race here. He's only a few seconds behind Gasly, even though Gasly started a way higher. Gasly is on fresher tyres, so Gasly will continue to pull away. But yeah, Doohan's had a good race.
Yeah. Just less mistakes.
Well, like we said, when he doesn't make mistakes, he's absolutely fine. It's just keeping it all together. As Piastri now 9 tenths behind, and I think he now, yeah, he does. Piastri now has the DRS. So now what do McLaren do? As Max being told, just tracking potentially incorrect, adjust at the stop. An issue with the flap, they were saying there on the radio. As Verstappen, now that Lando has got his teammate in his mirrors, Verstappen is pulling the gap a bit up to 1.5 seconds. As they come up to Spoon. Antonelli, by the way, is still catching Russell. Not sure he'll catch him before the end, but the gap is coming down. As Piastri now is going to get a good, very nice toe now, all the way to the chicane. And just needs a decent exit to at least just keep him in good enough range to maybe have a look at Lando. But no, he doesn't get a good exit, but he will still have DRS. But I guess with McLaren, given that both drivers are in the Drivers' Championship fight, and obviously Max is as well, I don't think they can really at this point say to any of them to let whoever through or whatever. So it's all down to the drivers at this point. As Piastri doing very well around the Degners and the hairpin and Spoon as well. Keeps Lando not too far ahead of him. But I mean, this is great news, though, isn't it, for Max? As long as it stays like this and Piastri's tucked up behind Lando here, Max is heading for victory. They need just some explosion of pace, don't they, McLaren, if they're going to have any chance?
Yep, and I don't see it coming, quite frankly.
Yeah, it's Lando. He's been close a couple times to maybe getting DRS, but it's just not been enough. They need to hope that Max's tyres fall off a cliff, but that's not going to happen. As Piastri pushing for all it's worth through this S's section. As Antonelli has got the gap under 6 seconds to his teammate now. And is there any other fights out there? Well, we've got Sainz within a second of Hulkenberg. Sainz obviously on the soft compound tyre. You'd think Carlos will get that move done. Faster car, fresher tyres. As Piastri slightly closer on this lap, coming on to the up to Spoon.
Norris had a moment out of the hairpin, slight overcorrection.
And he's got a good, decent run, Piastri. Definitely going to be a bit closer. About half a second it'll be as they break for the chicane. And Piastri saying, if Lando is still saving, I think he should go soon. I think I have the pace to get Max. Well, if Lando is saving to a degree for a final few laps of pushing, then that's not necessarily the worst thing. It's just, is Lando good enough to only need a few laps to beat Max? So yeah, we'll have to see. But if Oscar can go a lot quicker and maybe get after and beat Max, then maybe McLaren need to think about this. As
I think there's no doubt that Piastri's being held up.
Absolutely, but like, does Oscar have the pace to catch and pass Max? So I'm not sure at this point. As Oscar was just told that this is Lando's pace, so Lando is not.
It's faster.
Saving, as he is closer again into Spoon. Again, oh, good exit. Very good exit. Gained about a tenth of a second just on the exit. And Oscar really now is going to get nice and close under braking. And yeah, McLaren, if they're going to make a decision, they're going to make it quick because it's just getting closer and closer to looking like Piastri is going to overtake. As we come onto the pit straight, DRS open for Piastri down to turn 1. He's closing. He's not going to be close enough to overtake. But they've got to make a decision, McLaren. And they've got to stick to it. Personally, I would tell Lando to let Oscar through, but whether Lando would do that is a completely different topic. As good exit for Oscar on the Degner 2. As don't quite see what the gap is from the exit of the hairpin. I don't think it's as good as it was. No, it's not as good as it was the time before. As Antonelli has got the gap down to 4.7. So Antonelli might actually get Russell before the end. He is catching at a decent rate of knots, and there is still another, I think, just under 10 laps to go. So it's going to be close between Russell and Antonelli at the very end. As Piastri's now dropped over a second behind Lando in the dirty air. Still, we've got 8 laps to go. Max Verstappen leading this race. Norris second, Piastri third, and then Leclerc, Russell, Antonelli, Hamilton, Hadjar, Albon, and Behrman. And I know this is only race 3 of the season, but this is a crucial race for that top 3. And especially for Max Verstappen and Lando Norris, this is a very crucial race. As they've got some traffic they're about to come up to and lap. Not quite sure who it is. It's, yeah, can't quite see, but there is a car I think they're about to lap. Might be Stroll in the Aston Martin. As Lando slightly closer to Max now. And yeah, it is Stroll. Not too far ahead of Max, so this might cause a bit of disruption here. And Stroll is just going to let all 3 of them go down the pit straight, so that's all well and good. But honestly, I think it's going to remain this way because the top 3 are just so close on lap time. There's no big enough difference pace-wise for there to be an overtake here, I don't think.
Yep.
As Lando, saying that, is still edging closer to Verstappen. 1.1 seconds it is on the end of the first sector. And Norris gets a good exit from Degner 2. But Norris gets a poor exit from the hairpin compared to Max.
So Oscar was drifting through the exit of Degner 2.
As Verstappen, if he wins this race, as they just showed on the broadcast, he will remain second in the championship if he wins this race. But he will be only 1 point behind Norris. Meanwhile, Piastri will go up to 3rd, just ahead of Russell by a few points. As on lap 47, Piastri, I think it's just about, yeah, he's got the DRS again now, Piastri. And you would hope if you're a McLaren team principal, you'd hope that Piastri pushing so hard behind would push Lando to get after Max, but it just isn't quite working that way. As Antonelli, another fastest lap, a 1:31.0. Working very well, that strategy for Antonelli. He's now only 3.5 seconds behind Russell. Again, it's going to be close at the end. Russell probably will hang on for 5th, but it will be not a lot separating them. But 5th and 6th is still a decent result for Mercedes, considering they are second in the championship. They would still score 18 point or 18 points, because obviously no more fastest lap point. Red Bull would catch them by a few points, but Mercedes would still comfortably be ahead. As Piastri following in the slipstream. And yeah, just not getting the good enough exit once again in the dirty air. Lap 48, Max leads by 1.1 seconds. Piastri just 0.6 behind. Less than 2 seconds cover the top 3. And like it has all race long, it's been threatening to go off, but will it go off? Is the question. But Lando is gaining nicely through this first sector on Max. And Lando gets a good exit from the second Degner. So does Piastri. Piastri taking a bit of a wider line through the hairpin. Here's a replay of Antonelli. I presume just locked up, went wide. Yeah. Touched the grass on the left-hand side, which I think forced him to go a bit deeper. As Piastri, bit of a tighter line there. Through Spoon, and he gets a brilliant exit. And now, as Antonelli says, I'm giving everything, mate. And Bono says, good lad, on the radio. As Piastri gets a decent exit. Not good enough, though, I don't think, to have a look at Norris into turn 1 as we're on lap 49. Piastri closing. But it's still... If turn 1 was a hairpin, Piastri would have been past him by now.
Yeah, I think that's the closest he's going to get, probably.
Yeah. As yeah, he's now dropping back a bit in the first sector, in the dirty air again. And here is Carlos Sainz finally passing Nico Hülkenberg for 15th place. Sainz on the soft. Let me just update that. Because yeah, Piastri not as close on this occasion, and Norris has dropped a bit further behind Max. The gap now 1.4 seconds between Verstappen and Norris. And Max, if he keeps it all together, I'm pretty sure he is going to win this race for the 4th year running. As he starts lap 50. And this would also be a massive win for his World Championship bid, especially if next Grand Prix in Bahrain next week, if that upgrade does work, they'll be right back in business. But yeah, Piastri struggling to hang on now, as I think his tyres might have had its best day. Antonelli only 2.3 seconds behind his teammate. Russell might have to defend his 5th place before he gets to the checkered flag. As now, Piastri has dropped over a second, sadly behind Lando Norris. As Verstappen into the chicane, just 1.2 seconds clear of Lando as Carlos Sainz is now ahead of Jack Doohan on lap 51. So Sainz at least will finish higher than he started. As Norris, I think, slightly gaining back in. On Verstappen is a replay of Sainz passing Doohan around the outside at turn 1. I did just see Rooks in the chat say surprising lack of overtakes. Yeah, not as many as I think last year there was quite a bit more. But we did have some alternate strategies, at least, in last year's race. As another fastest lap for Antonelli, 1:30.9, as he's got the gap to 1.8 seconds now. As Norris is probably, will he be 1.1 behind, I think, through the chicane? Yeah, he will, but still, Max keeps just over a second ahead. And that's really why Max Verstappen is probably going to win this race, because those hundredths of a second or tenths of a second that keeps him out of DRS range and just about far enough ahead that he needs to be, that is what makes the difference in races like these. And that's why he wins championships, and that's why he's going to win probably this Grand Prix. And again, a race that is crucial for his season. As Norris gets a poor exit from the hairpin, drops 0.3 of a second to Verstappen. As Antonelli just over a second behind Russell. And Max, in a moment, as he just comes through this final chicane, will start the final lap of this Japanese Grand Prix. Nib, a word for who is surely going to be our race winner. Like I said, he has made the difference this weekend between winning and just being on the podium. What a driver he is, Max Verstappen.
One of the all-time greats, just showing why he's one of the all-time greats once again. Unbelievable lap in quali, and a lap so good that it's ended up winning him this Grand Prix unless something crazy happens here on this final lap. Withstood, well, I wouldn't say withstood the pressure. I mean, he's not had to defend apart from out of the pit lane, but just as nailed everything in this race as Verstappen. Flawless drive.
Absolutely. Like you said, that pole position has pretty much got him the race win today as he comes up spoon. And flies through that part of the track, and for the final time begins to climb towards 130R. And if you look at history here at Suzuka, only the absolute elite and some of the greatest we've ever seen dominate at Suzuka, whether it's Senna, Schumacher, Hamilton, and Max Verstappen absolutely is one of those as he comes out of the final corner. And for the first time this year, Max Verstappen wins. And he wins the Japanese Grand Prix for the 4th year in a row. And kickstarts properly his World Championship bid. Lando Norris 2nd, Piastri 3rd, Leclerc 4th. Russell is going to be 5th, Antonelli 6th. Lewis Hamilton in 7th. Isaac Hadjar 8th, his first points finish in Formula 1. What a drive, what a weekend. Alex Albon in 9th. Oliver Behrman will finish in 10th, as we'll have this whole gaggle of cars of Doohan, Hulkenberg, Lawson, Ocon and Bortoletto fighting for the last few positions. And then, yeah, it should be Alonso 11th, Tsunoda 12th, Gasly 13th, Sainz 14th, Doohan 15th, Hulkenberg 16th, and then Lawson, Ocon, Bortoletto, and Lance Stroll. And Stroll ending up as the only driver to be lapped in this Grand Prix. As we'll just watch these final midfield cars come to the end. And yeah, not too bad of a race there for Jack Doohan. As they all come home, all 20 cars finishing the Grand Prix. But yeah, that's it, guys, for the Japanese Grand Prix. What I'll do quickly is just get that poll up to ask you who you think driver of the day is. Who do you think is day in Japan? I'm assuming your driver of the day is probably going to be Verstappen.
Yeah, got to be Verstappen.
Yeah, Verstappen. I'd put in there. Yeah, Verstappen. I think definitely has to be the clear driver of the day. Antonelli, I'm going to put in the vote. I think he deserves a shout out today. And then normally I go
not a whole load of standout drives because there was barely any overtaking.
Yeah. Well, because of that, I'm only going to go for 3 options in my poll, which is Verstappen, Antonelli, and Hadjar. For me, clearly Verstappen, driver of the day. But if you think it's anyone else, then comment or vote in that poll. Who is your driver of the day? But yeah, that was a pretty boring race. That's probably one of the worst, if not the worst, Japanese Grand Prix that I've seen in maybe ever. It was very, very boring. As Yuki Tsunoda, of course, wins driver of the day because the F1 community on social media is psychotic. It was funny actually. I had a guy. I think he normally that's actually a replay of right before the end. Lando locked up and went deeper at the chicane. Don't know why. What do you call it? Yeah, it's a guy called Rob, who I think sometimes is in the chat. Commented on my last watchalong saying, "Oh, the public vote for Antonelli, yet you didn't have Antonelli in my poll." And it's like, it was obviously a meme. He didn't deserve to win driver of the day. He didn't do anything in the last race, so I'm not going to include him in my poll just because the public voted for him. But Verstappen, yeah, what a win! What a weekend! And this could be very well the kickstart he needs. And look how incredibly happy he is that he was able to pull it off. As both McLaren drivers looking pretty disappointed that they weren't able to get the win. A win that seemed so sure after Friday practice and even during qualifying until that final lap. As Antonelli, by the way, ended up only a second behind his teammates. Good drive from Antonelli. First weekend around Suzuka. How do you think Antonelli's done so far? It's been not obviously. It's not been the headline. Maybe first 3 races of his career. Maybe some people were expecting, but I think he's done. I think he's done well.
He's not set the world alight, but it's so difficult to do so in these cars. He's not been a million miles off Russell. Great drive in Australia. A little bit more disappointing in China, but bounces back with another great performance here today. So, I've been very impressed by Antonelli.
Yeah, I think he's done well so far, especially in that car. And yeah, once we start going to race tracks where he's got a bit of experience around, we should start to see a bit more of the best of Antonelli. And one of those tracks he has raced around before is Bahrain. And of course, that's where we're going to be next week. And then the week after be Saudi Arabia, where he also has a bit of experience from F2. So yeah, decent start to life in Formula 1 for Antonelli. And Antonelli still 5th in the championship, ahead of the 2 Ferrari drivers, who Ferrari are now 4th in the championship after finally, at least for now, until they get disqualified in a couple hours. They're finally for now ahead of the midfield pack. Williams are still going to be in, or now will be in 5th, but clearly ahead of the other midfield teams. And then it'll be Haas 6th, Aston Martin 7th, and then I think Racing Bulls and Sauber are going to be level on points. And Alpine, 0 points still after 3 races. But there is a clear winner in the poll, so I'll just finish it up quickly. 23 votes, and I asked you guys, who do you think is the driver of the day for the Japanese Grand Prix? 65% of you have gone for Max Verstappen, and yeah, clear driver of the day. By the way, cheers to Count Blas. Just thanks for the hangout, guys. It was worth it since the race wasn't lol. No problem. And thank you all for coming along for this race watch along. Before you go, guys, make sure to smash the like button, and all of that does help the channel grow in the algorithm and helps, again, show me that you guys like the content. So make sure to do that before you go. And obviously, if you are new to the channel, make sure to subscribe for more content like this. Because, yeah, we'll be back next Sunday, obviously, for the race watch along. And I will be doing a qualifying watch along next week for Bahrain. And then both quali and race watch along the week after for the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. Nib, cheers for coming on. Even though, yeah, horrible race in terms of entertainment, yeah, thanks for coming on for today.
I sadly feared it was going to be the case. I messaged you after FP2 that it was going to be a shite, boring, medium to hard one stop, and that's exactly what it was, unfortunately. But yes, of course, I will be along for the next race watch along in Bahrain as well, and of course, thanks everyone for tuning in at these a little bit early hours in Europe, and yeah, pleasure to be on as always, Chaz.
Yeah, cheers for coming on as usual. And yeah, make sure, guys, to like and subscribe before you head off as well. Make sure to check out my latest videos on the channel, just to let you guys know as well. So yeah, tomorrow I will be uploading a podcast reviewing this Grand Prix weekend, and then next Saturday will be the next bit of content, and I will be live at, I believe, 3:30 p.m. UK time. Yes, 3:30 p.m. UK time. I'll be live for the qualifying watch along for the Bahrain Grand Prix, and then I'll be live at 2 p.m. UK time for the race watch along next Sunday in Bahrain. So make sure to come along for that next weekend in what should be hopefully a better Grand Prix. But yeah, cheers for you guys all coming along, and hope to see you guys for the next Grand Prix in Bahrain. But yeah, cheers for this weekend, guys. And until next time, it has been me, Chazza HD. Goodbye.